and that perhaps is quicker than authorities in Saudi Arabia had counted on.
We also have a new oil report out from the International Energy Agency today. That report says global oil markets still face a surplus next year, even if OPEC delivers those new production cuts. So what stands out for you there?
I think there are two things. I mean, firstly, this is the third of three big monthly reports. The first was a couple of days ago from the U.S. Department of Energy, their short-term energy outlook. Yesterday, OPEC published its own monthly report. The International Energy Agency followed today. All three of those show that even with OPEC making the full additional cuts that they promised last week in Vienna, the first half of 2020 still looks problematic for the producers. The OPEC figures show that even if they make all the cuts, they're only just about going to balance the market in the first half of the year. The IEA is more pessimistic. They still see global inventories growing in the first half of next year. So I think the real concern is that while OPEC put a good spin on what they agreed in Vienna, they really haven't gone far enough if they want to balance the market in the first half of next year. The second half looks a bit better, but they have this problem in the first 6 months of 2020.
All right, thank you so much. Bloomberg oil strategist, Bloomberg opinion contributor, Jillian Lee. I want to thank you for taking the time and setting us straight on all of that, joining us from our London bureau. And you can read more on these and other stories from Bloomberg Opinion at Bloomberg.com/opinion and on the Bloomberg terminal by typing OPIN GO. Karen.
All right, Amy, thank you. It is 5:53 on Wall Street. It's time for the Bloomberg Law Report. Let's get to the legal stories we're watching this morning from Bloomberg's Jeff Bellinger.
The Senate confirmed Lawrence Van Dyke to a lifetime appointment to the Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit. Van Dyke is the 50th appellate court judge to be named by President Trump. Healthcare Services Corporation is suing Pfizer and dozens of other pharmaceutical companies over what it says were egregious overcharges for widely used generic drugs. And environmentalists are planning to appeal the recent approval for a $310 million liquefied natural gas facility in the port of Tacoma, Washington.
Bloomberg Law, everything you need on one legal research platform. Guidance, analysis, and Bloomberg Market Intelligence. Find out more at BloombergLaw.com.
And now another legal story we're watching is a trial to determine the players in the nation's wireless market. 13 states and D.C. are suing to block the $26 billion merger of T-Mobile and Sprint. They say it'll drive up prices, reduce the level of service, and violate antitrust laws. For more on the trial, Bloomberg's June Grasso speaks with Spencer Waller, a professor at Loyola Law School.
Is it unprecedented for the states to reject a settlement by the feds and sue to block the merger?
It's not unprecedented, but it's very, very rare. The Supreme Court for a long time has said that the states operate independently from the feds in the antitrust area, and they can challenge things that the feds don't challenge at all, or that they settle and the states believe that they have a strong case. But it's been few and far between. By and large, the states prefer to work with either the FTC or the DOJ and work together in a coalition to attack mergers of this kind.
How can removing a low-cost rival from a highly concentrated industry not have a negative effect on competition? What's T-Mobile Sprint's argument at trial?
Well, it's tough. T-Mobile has played a really unprecedented role in the cell phone industry as the maverick, as the disruptor, as the one that not only was aggressively competing on price and service and some other things, but also was the carrier in particular that was keeping AT&T and Verizon on their toes and forcing them to respond in kind in numerous markets. So the theory is strong. It was part of why prior acquisitions of T-Mobile were challenged. It was part of why this particular merger was of great concern 4 years ago under the Obama administration. The best I can tell you is they're positioning this as a merger that would create a strong number three and allow them to better compete with AT&T and Verizon. That is the story that they're pitching in their documents and in their testimony at trial.
When the feds gave their blessing to the merger, they required certain concessions. What were those concessions that led the feds to say, okay, this deal can go through?
It's not unusual for the feds to approve a deal subject to restructuring. It is more often, you could imagine, let's say, take supermarkets. If there's a merger that creates a very highly concentrated local market, you could sell off some supermarkets to another national chain and keep things roughly the same. What's unusual about this deal is that the divestitures are this rickety package of assets, spectrum, legal rights, and other things. So basically, the two companies are being forced to, or agreed to, spin off their prepaid cellular plans to Dish, the satellite TV provider that does own some spectrum and has some plans to enter the cell phone market. In addition, there's some spectrum transfers. There is provision of services so that the new Dish cell phone entity can use the facilities of the two merging parties so that all the calls can be completed. That's basically the package. And this is getting someone who's not been in the business before and will be dependent on the very parties who are merging in order to compete with these parties and with the two large carriers that are already dominating the market.
And that's Loyola Law School professor Spencer Waller speaking with Bloomberg's June Grasso. Catch more of that interview plus analysis of the latest legal news by subscribing to the Bloomberg Law Podcast or downloading the show at Bloomberg.com/podcast. And attorneys can find exceptional legal research and business development tools at BloombergLaw.com. S&P futures are up 2 points this morning. Dow futures up 2, NASDAQ futures up 9. The DAX in Germany is a little changed. 10-year Treasury down 2/32, yield 1.8%. The yield on the 2-year is at 1.60%. NYMEX crude oil up 0.6% or 33 cents at $59.09 a barrel. The euro at 1.1130 against the dollar. And Bloomberg Daybreak continues. This is Bloomberg.
Influential.
'Tis the season to be hunched over your laptop. Not on our watch. In real life, you can fill your senses and your baskets. Feel all the sights, sounds, lols, and OMGs. Wear laughing emojis on actual smiley faces. Battery is running low. Take the kids to Santa's Grotto. In real life, you can find just the right present using the most advanced search engine in the world. Your eyes. We hunt in real life. Brent Cross, London. Free parking for all sleighs and cars.
Christmas. A time for sharing gifts and laughter. And photos and videos. Make the most of it with a SIM-only deal packed with data from Tesco Mobile. Like a 10-gig SIM for just £13 a month. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile today. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 29th of December. 12-month contract and unlocked 4G-enabled phone required. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
The financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Thursday, December 12th, 2019. Coming up this hour.
The Fed stands pat through 2020, looking to stay on the sidelines in an election year.
Now the focus shifts to the ECB as President Christine Lagarde takes the podium for the first time.
Saudi Aramco surges again, pushing the oil giant's valuation to $2 trillion.
The House Judiciary Committee is set to finish debating articles of impeachment today, and Elizabeth Warren may be overestimating the proceeds of her wealth tax. I'm John Tucker. Those stories straight ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. Rare win for the Knicks in overtime at Golden State and a 10-game losing streak. The Nets lost to Charlotte. The Jets play tonight in Baltimore.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning. I'm Karen Moscow.
I'm Amy Morris. Bloomberg Daybreak is brought to you by IBKR, the professional's gateway to the world's markets. Their clients enjoy lowest cost access to stocks, options, futures, forex, and fixed income from a single integrated account. Learn more at ibkr.com.
And global stocks are edging higher today. 6:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 3 points now. Dow futures up 9. NASDAQ futures up 11. The DAX in Germany's up almost 0.1%. So is the CAC in Paris, and the FTSE 100 up 0.5%. 10-year Treasury down 2/30 seconds. Yield 1.79%. Yield on the 2-year 1.60%. COMEX gold is up 0.25% or $4 to $14.79.10 an ounce. The euro, 1.1129 against the dollar. The yen at 108.66. Amy.
Karen, we begin this morning with the Federal Reserve signaling interest rates will remain unchanged through 2020.
Our economic outlook remains a favorable one, despite global developments and ongoing risks. With our decisions through the course of the past year, we believe that monetary policy is well positioned to serve the American people by supporting continued economic growth, a strong job market, and inflation near our symmetric 2% goal.
In a 50-minute press conference, Chairman Jerome Powell repeatedly said the labor market can still improve despite unemployment at a half-century low.
The Fed's latest dot plot shows 13 officials predicting no change to rates next year and 4 policymakers forecasting a quarter-point increase. Jeffrey Rosenberg is Senior Fixed Income Portfolio Manager at BlackRock.
This is no longer a preemptive Fed. This is a Fed that is trying to generate inflationary pressures. And that's partly what you see, I think, in that path of those dots.
So the federal funds target range holds steady at 1.5% to 1.75% as uncertainties remain from the U.S.-China trade war and slowing global growth. Scott Meinert is Chief Investment Officer at Guggenheim.
Some of the members of the committee actually believe the real neutral rate is negative. So, maybe the neutral rate isn't 2.5 or 2.25. Maybe it's closer to 1.5. And that's the kind of debate I think they're having internally. And they're just groping in the dark to figure out what to do at this point because they're in unexplored territory.
Signs point to the Fed standing pat through 2020, staying on the sidelines in an election year.
Chairman Powell also discussed how the Fed is reacting to stress in the repo market in response to a question from Bloomberg's Michael McKee. Here he is with details now from our Bloomberg 99.1 newsroom in Washington.
They're looking at changing bank regulations and the possibility of buying not just T-bills, but longer maturity securities as well, and a standing facility to enable banks to borrow when needed, though no decisions have been made.
We think that the pressures appear manageable, and we stand ready to adjust the details of our operations as necessary to keep the federal funds rate in the target range.
With repo, as with rates, the message from the meeting was status quo. We have things under control, and we'll try to keep it that way. Powell, however, acknowledged there are no guarantees, talking about how he stood before reporters last year at this time when the Fed was raising rates and considering doing so again. In Washington, Michael McKee, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Michael, thank you. Up next, we get a policy decision from the European Central Bank, plus Christine Lagarde's first press conference as president. Analysts expect no change to policy, but Lagarde could face questions about how to deliver more stimulus with rates already in negative territory. Paul Sheard is a senior fellow at Harvard Kennedy School.
When a central bank is running low on interest rate ammunition, that is a surefire sign that the time has come to bring in fiscal policy, not on a temporary basis, but to help monetary policy out, and for the two of them to work together in the same direction until its mission accomplished.
Lagarde and former President Mario Draghi have both pressed for additional government spending. Lagarde's communication will be closely watched today. After a career as a lawyer and politician, she's the first ECB leader to have never worked as a central banker.
Turning to corporate news now, Saudi Aramco has reached a milestone. Shares jumped by the daily limit again to push the oil giant's valuation beyond $2 trillion. Here with more is Bloomberg's Anthony DePaula in Dubai.
There was a lot of domestic support and regional support for the IPO. Local investors will get basically 1 share for every 10 shares they hold after 6 months if they keep the stock. So there's incentive to keep the shares. There's not really incentive to sell for people there.
The soaring valuation could complicate efforts for an international listing. Global investors previously balked at Saudi Aramco's targeted valuation of $2 trillion.
Meantime, global oil markets still face a surplus next year, even if OPEC delivers new production cuts, as according to the International Energy Agency, which sees inventories accumulating by 700,000 barrels a day in the first quarter. The IEA says supplies outside OPEC, especially U.S. shale, continue to grow much faster than global demand. Checking prices now, NYMEX crude oil up 0.6% at $59.09 a barrel. Brent is up 0.9% at $64.28.
In Asia today, chip stocks led a rally in equities, which saw the MSCI Asia Pacific Index gain 0.5%. Bloomberg's Juliet Sally joining us now from Singapore with details. Good morning, Juliet.
Good morning, Amy and Karen. In Taipei, shares in TSMC surpassed South Korea's Samsung once again in terms of market cap, rising to a record and boosting the TAIEX to its highest level since 1990. The Kospi jumped the most in 3 months, also boosted by yet another upbeat 2020 broker forecast. This time Citi, which sees the Kospi gain around 12% more than Wednesday's close over the course of next year, and the Nikkei gained 0.1% in Tokyo, despite data showing Japan's core machinery orders fell more than forecast in October. In Singapore, I'm Juliet Sally, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Juliet, thank you. Straight ahead, the latest world and national news. This is Bloomberg.
6:07 on Wall Street. Let's bring in John Tucker to find out what else is going on in the world. Good morning, John.
And Amy, the House Judiciary Committee set to finish debating articles of impeachment against President Trump today, with a likely party line vote to send the resolution to the floor of the House. Arizona Democrat Greg Stanton, a Judiciary Committee member, urged his Republican colleagues to consider several key questions at a late-night hearing.
Did the president grossly abuse his power? Did his actions harm our nation? And if unchecked, is the president likely to repeat his behavior?
Republican Congressman Jim Jordan of Ohio reacted strongly to the upcoming committee vote.
They're never going to stop with their attacks because they can't stand the fact that President Trump is actually draining the swamp and doing what he said he would do, and most importantly, getting results.
Senate Republicans say there's an early consensus building within their ranks for a short impeachment trial that could see the GOP-led chamber to vote on a likely acquittal of President Trump without hearing from any witnesses. Senator Elizabeth Warren is overestimating the proceeds of her wealth tax by at least $1 trillion. That's according to new estimates from the Penn-Wharton budget model. It's raising questions about the Democratic presidential candidate's plans to fund her sweeping proposals to reshape the U.S. economy. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee has voted to advance sanctions against Turkey, a NATO ally, for that country's military offensive in northern Syria and for its purchase of a Russian-made missile system. And growing concern about anti-Semitic incidents nationwide after Tuesday's hours-long shootout at a Jewish grocery store in New Jersey that left 6 people dead, including a police officer and the 2 suspects. Authorities now say surveillance footage of the attack uncovered by investigators show it was a targeted attack. Jersey City Mayor Steve Fulop is mourning the loss of lives in his city.
There is no question that this is a hate crime, and anti-Semitism should be called out aggressively and firmly, immediately for what it is.
Authorities also warn that several fake GoFundMe pages have popped up purporting to raise funds for the family of the slain officer, a father of 5. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker, and this is Bloomberg. Amy.
All right, thank you, John. It is 6:09 on Wall Street. Time now for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John Stashower.
Amy, the Knicks and Warriors, the 2 worst teams in the NBA. Knicks have been bad for most of the last 2 decades. Golden State's made the finals the last 5 years, but with injuries and defections, they're nothing like that team. And the Knicks able to beat the Warriors in San Francisco, 124-122 in overtime to end a 10-game losing streak. Marcus Morris with 36 points. Elfrid Payton, I'm pulling out the win.
It was huge for us to get this win, especially not only the losing streak that we're on, but the way we started the game. We had control of the game the whole game, and kind of let it get away from us in the second half. So to still regroup in this overtime and get the win was huge.
First win for the new coach, Mike Miller at Barclays. Nets blew a 20-point lead, lost to Charlotte 113-108, ending Brooklyn's 3-game win streak. Devontae Graham poured in 40 for the Hornets. Kawhi Leonard back in Toronto, first time since leading the Raptors to the title. His Clippers won by 20. Lakers and Bucks both won again. They are both 22-3. Good win for Rutgers, 72-65 over Wisconsin. Second straight night of Big Ten upset as Illinois down 5th-ranked Michigan. The last Thursday night game of the NFL season figures to be a mismatch. John Harbaugh's Ravens, a 17-point favorite to beat the Jets.
You know, our guys don't take anybody for granted. You never can, you never should, but certainly not a team that's won 4 of the last 5 games. It has players like Le'Veon Bell and Anderson and Darnold on offense, and our guys do understand that. I do appreciate that about our guys.
Baltimore's won 9 in a row. Another big baseball signing, Anthony Rendon with the Angels, total package of nearly $250 million. The Mets signed pitcher Michael Wacha. We're at the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. I'm John Stashower. Amy.
All right. Thank you, John. Another goal for streaming companies. When it comes to European soccer, Amazon and DAZN, D-A-Z-N, have edged out Sky to secure exclusive rights to stream coverage of Europe's top club soccer competition in Germany. Comcast's Sky had dominated coverage of the UEFA Champions League tournament for the past 2 decades. S&P futures 1/10% higher. Dow futures fraction higher. NASDAQ futures 0.1% higher. Much more to come on Bloomberg Daybreak. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg Radio.
The lifeblood of tech startups isn't just money. It's executive and technical skills. The kind of skills that companies need to build real products. And the skills that venture capitalist Chris Sugden of Edison Partners sees in the graduates that are coming out of New Jersey Institute of Technology.
The amazing thing about NJIT is their graduates, they have multiple offers on average, not just one. They're coming out with real skill sets that are immediately hireable and available to them. I think we see an understanding by the faculty and administration at NJIT that we've got to train and educate the whole student, not just their, one side of their brain. And I do think that's sort of part of the DNA today. There's practical and there's sort of academia, and merging those two together and understanding that if we're going to have our young people go get great jobs and have great successful careers, they've got to have both sides of their brain activated. And I think we see that with NJIT.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich, no. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night, and somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here, testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
What's the sign of a really first-class funeral directors? Is it how they're with you every step of the way? Is it the care they take looking after your loved one? The superb organisation they show on the day itself? The thoughtful little touches you maybe weren't expecting? Yes, it's all those things. But there's another sign you should also be looking for. The one that says Dignity. You'll find it on every one of our branches and on the Dignity website. When you see it, you'll know you couldn't be in better hands. Dignity Funeral Directors. Taking the greatest care.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Taylor Riggs.
Venture capital is coming to terms with its lack of diversity, and Lo Tony is leading the charge. The former Google Ventures partner founded his own firm, Plexo Capital, with a mission to invest in early-stage funds led by women and underrepresented minorities. Plexo Capital announced today it raised a $42.5 million for its debut fund, and Lo Tony joins us now from New York. Lo, congratulations. What are you using the money for?
So we're going to use that money to invest into both venture funds led by a woman or a person of color, and then invest directly into companies that will source from the portfolios where we've made investments into venture capital firms.
What sectors do you like right now?
So we like enterprise and consumer. Typically, we go after VCs that are generalists and maybe lean a little bit more towards enterprise.
I want to talk about how you identify these opportunities. Often there's a great idea. Often there's a really good leader. What matters to you more?
We do like to make sure that the market opportunity can support a venture scale return. That said, it's all about the ability for the entrepreneur to be able to execute, to be able to hire the right employees, have the right vision for the product and the opportunity.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Stocks are edging higher in Europe, and U.S. stock index futures are higher as well as investors digest the Federal Reserve's signal that U.S. interest rates will remain unchanged through 2020 while preparing for the European Central Bank's policy decision. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 3.5 points. Dow futures up 25. NASDAQ futures up 12. The DAX in Germany is up 0.2%. CAC in Paris up 0.1%. And the FTSE 100 is up 0.7%. The Nikkei 225 in Japan gained 0.1%, and the Hang Seng in Hong Kong jumped 1.3%. 10-year Treasury down 2/32, yield 1.8%. Yield on the 2-year 1.60%. NYMEX crude oil up 0.5% or 29 cents at $59.05 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.25% or $3.90 at $14.78.90 an ounce. The euro 1.1128 against the dollar. British pound 1.3165, and the yen is at 108.69. Today we are watching for another reading on inflation with the producer price index at 8:30 Wall Street time, along with the weekly initial jobless claims number. The Bloomberg Consumer Comfort Index is out at 9:45. Adobe, Oracle, and Costco are among the companies that are scheduled to report earnings today. And Saudi Aramco shares jumped for a second day, with the oil giant's value hitting the $2 trillion mark. That alienated global investors and potentially making further share sales abroad more difficult. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's John Tucker with more on what's going on around the world. John, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Karen. The House Judiciary Committee is set to finish debating articles of impeachment against President Trump today, with a likely party line vote to send the resolution to the floor of the House. Joe Biden says he would reverse Donald Trump's immigration policies during his first 100 days in office. Biden issued his immigration plan months after most of his Democratic rivals. UN Ambassador Kelly Craft is warning North Korea could test launch intercontinental ballistic missiles, which are designed to attack the United States. Sports, Jets play the Ravens in Thursday Night Football. And in basketball, the Knicks beat the Warriors in overtime. The Celtics, they fell to the Pacers. Hockey, the Capitals beat the Bruins. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker, and this is Bloomberg. Amy.
All right, thank you, John. It is 6:20 on Wall Street. We are live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. Christine Lagarde will be shaking off the shadow of her predecessor today at her debut press conference as European Central Bank president. No doubt she's going to get a lot of questions about the policy review that she'll be launching. Joining us now, David Powell, senior Euro area economist with Bloomberg Economics. David, thank you for taking the time with us this morning. Before we get to the nitty-gritty of the press conference, would like to know what you're looking out for out of the new forecasts that we expect from the ECB today.
Right. Well, the forecasts are not really going to be a center of focus. Normally they are, but for two reasons, that is. And that's because things have largely developed in line with how the ECB saw them at the last time the forecasts were released and the last time major monetary stimulus was announced. And really the focus is going to be on that strategic review, because that monetary stimulus, it was already announced by Draghi before he left, is going to be in place for a long time. We think those asset purchases will continue for about 2 years, though they haven't announced a firm deadline yet.
Now, let's talk about that strategic review, because the ECB hasn't really embarked on a review in years. So there are going to be a lot of questions about this. What do you expect to come out of this, some of those questions and answers?
Yeah, that's right. It's been since, I think, 2003 since the ECB last had a strategic review. And the last time that happened, they clarified their inflation target. They used to say it was below 2%, and they clarified it to be below but close to 2%. And once again, the focus is on the potential for clarifying or maybe even changing the inflation target. There are some people that think they could potentially get rid of the phrase "and close to," so it would just be a flat-out 2%. Maybe they think that's too ambitious, and they'll decide to lower it, or look at things around that. But it's far too early to expect any announcements or specifics about what their conclusions will be, because after all, this is just the start of the review, and they'll have to complete a review before coming to conclusions. So today, all we would likely have is an announcement that it's going to happen, and maybe some suggestion as to what the review will actually look at.
Right, more clarity on the details of what the review is going to be like, the parameters, how it's going to shape up.
Exactly.
So when it comes to the press conference itself, Christine Lagarde is not an economist. She comes from a totally different background. What are you looking for from her in those comments?
Well, really, we'll be looking for beyond her comments on the review, her comments about the economy, about the stimulus that's in place, and also if we could gauge some sense of how she's handling the divisions that exist within the governing council that relate to the stimulus that's in place. When Draghi left, the last package that he put in place was a controversial measure. He alienated some of his colleagues. They took unprecedented steps of publicly making their disapproval known, and we'll want to see where Christine Lagarde is beginning with all that. Is she kind of bringing the governing council back together? Is she going to make some movement toward greater harmony? So we'll be looking at all that, what she says about monetary policy, what she says about the future. But like I said, don't expect any major announcements or really many big developments about near-term changes in monetary policy.
So then do you not think she might call on European governments to step up when it comes to fiscal policy and stimulus the way Mario Draghi did earlier this year?
In all likelihood, she will mention that, as Draghi often did at these press conferences, and she's already talked about that. So Christine Lagarde has spoken quite a bit already in the beginning of her time at the ECB, and she has touched on the need for governments to spend more money. She's also touched on the issue of climate change and how the ECB could potentially play a role with its asset purchases in helping with that. So these are also issues she's likely to touch upon, and she may use that strategic review to say some of those issues are going to be included in that.
All right, David Powell, the senior Euro area economist for Bloomberg Economics. I want to thank you for taking the time with us. It's going to be a lot to watch as Christine Lagarde takes on her very first press conference as head of the ECB. Thanks so much. Checking the markets now, S&P futures gaining 0.1%, Dow futures up almost 0.1%, NASDAQ futures up 0.1%, 10-year yield at 179, 2-year yield at 160, 30-year yields at 223. DAX in Germany up almost 0.2%, CAC in Paris up about 0.1%. Still ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak, we'll check the markets and bring you the latest news in business.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Jobs get attention today in the U.S. with the weekly snapshot of unemployment claims. We also get a reading on consumer comfort in a Bloomberg report and the November update on wholesale prices. Some big tech companies report their earnings today: Adobe, Broadcom, and Oracle. And we also hear from Costco. time is growing short with the tariff deadline looming this Sunday before the U.S. imposes a new round of levies on Chinese goods. Stocks rose slightly yesterday with the broader U.S. equity market up 0.3%. The Fed left rates unchanged as expected, also signaled that they won't be changing through next year. Nestle is selling its U.S. ice cream business that includes brands like Haagen-Dazs and Drumstick to a joint venture it created with a private equity firm. The price tag is $4 billion. The move comes as Nestle's CEO unloads slower-growing businesses like its U.S. candy operations to focus on pet food, water, and coffee. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Far wing, elevates, triple bucket.
The roar of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut it.
The sideline, the Van Fleet for three.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on the
Search
right.
NBA today to start listening.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
In the stock market and in life, everything can change from 1 minute to the next. Be the first to hear the latest money news and market trends with CNBC on TuneIn. Wherever your day takes you, listen to CNBC's full slate of programming, including shows like Fast Money, Squawk Box, and Mad Money with Jim Cramer. And when the next big business story breaks, CNBC lets you know with live updates and commentary. At the office, at home, or on the go. Search CNBC on TuneIn to listen.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught, it is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It's 6:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Amy Morris.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We are just about 3 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour. Stocks are higher around the world after Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell signaled interest rates will remain unchanged next year.
We believe that monetary policy is well positioned to serve the American people by supporting continued economic growth, a strong job market, and inflation near our symmetric 2% goal.
The decision to leave its rates unchanged came in the Fed's first unanimous vote since May. While the markets are not anticipating a rate cut next year, Grant Thornton chief economist Diane Swonk thinks the Fed's not done.
The Fed actually has a much lower threshold to cut rates than raise rates, and I think we still will see an additional rate cut, at least one next year, if not more than that. And that's something that the Fed doesn't want to say up front, but I think Chairman Powell is more than ready to do, and he's been able to get the votes even when it was tight.
The next Fed decision comes on January 29th.
Now it's the European Central Bank's turn. The ECB's first policy decision under President Christine Lagarde comes today, along with fresh projections. Bloomberg's Yana Randau has more from Frankfurt.
New economic forecasts will include a first glance at 2022, a first reading of inflation there, so that's probably the one number that we will look at most. The one thing that could be interesting is the policy review that everybody has been talking about.
Analysts expect no change to rates or asset purchases from the ECB.
Saudi Aramco has reached a milestone. Shares jumped by the daily limit again to push the oil giant's valuation beyond $2 trillion.
The International Energy Agency is predicting a global oil surplus next year, even if OPEC and its partners deliver newly announced production cuts in full. Checking oil right now, NYMEX crude oil is up 0.5% or 28 cents at $59.04 a barrel. Brent is up 0.8% at $64.21.
Shares
Bloomberg and S&P futures are higher, up 2 points. Dow futures up 14, Nasdaq futures up 9. The DAX in Germany is up less than 0.1%. 10-year Treasury down 1/32, yield 1.79%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.60%. The euro 1.1130 against the dollar. Straight ahead, the latest world and national news, and this is Bloomberg.
It's 6:33 on Wall Street. This news update brought to you by the Jewish Communal Fund. JCF's donor-advised fund is the smart choice to manage your philanthropy. Open a JCF fund now to lock in a 2019 tax deduction. Visit jcfny.org. Let's bring in John Tucker.
And good morning, Amy. The House Judiciary Committee has taken the first steps toward voting on articles of impeachment against President Trump. California Democrat Eric Swalwell at a hearing last night.
Donald Trump directed Rudy Giuliani to smear his political rival. Donald Trump fired an anti-corruption ambassador who stood in his way. Donald Trump withheld $391 million in aid that was essential to Ukraine.
Ohio Republican Jim Jordan says Americans should be scared by the impeachment process.
It would be well to remember that what can be done to a president can be done to any of us. This is scary stuff and serious stuff, and I hope you guys will reconsider and stop it while you can.
Last night's back and forth was a prelude to this morning's session, where the Democratic majority on the panel is expected to beat back a flurry of Republican amendments before sending the impeachment articles to the full House for a vote next week. Israel's deadlocked parliament has failed to meet a midnight deadline to form a coalition government there. That triggers an unprecedented third election in a 12-month period, while giving the scandal-plagued Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu a welcome break as he fights to save his political career. Joe Biden says he would reverse Donald Trump's immigration policies during his first 100 days in office, while renewing a push for Congress to pass a comprehensive immigration overhaul. Biden issued his immigration plan months after most most of his Democratic rivals, a sign how tricky the issue is for the former vice president. New Zealand's military specialists will land us on a small volcanic island just after first light Friday. They'll try to retrieve the bodies of 8 victims of an eruption that claimed 8 other lives and severely burned survivors. At Harvey Weinstein, the disgraced film mogul charged with rape, reached a tentative $47 million settlement with accusers, potentially putting an end to many of the civil complaints against him. At a bail hearing yesterday, a judge in a separate criminal case ordered Weinstein to post a $2 million insurance bond, up from $1 million, after prosecutors said he repeatedly violated the conditions for his release. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker, and this is Bloomberg. Amy.
All right, thank you, John. It is 6:35 on Wall Street. Time now for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. Here's John Stashauer.
Amy, Knicks and Warriors, one of those somebody had to win type games. Both teams came in with already 20 losses on the season. Looked like it'd be the Knicks easily up by 21. Sure enough, D'Angelo Russell, a late 3 to send the game to overtime. But the Knicks pulled it out. 124-122. Marcus Morris scored 36. The Knicks end a 10-game losing streak. It's the first win for the new coach, Mike Miller. The Nets blew a 20-point lead, lost at home to Charlotte, 113-108 as Devontae Graham scored 40 for the Hornets. College hoops in New Jersey. Rutgers beat Wisconsin 72-65, and St. Peter's over Fairleigh Dickinson 86-70. The Knights went to the NCAA tournament last year, even won a game. They're 2-7 this season. The United States has only lost the President's Cup golf once. That was over 20 years ago, but a terrible start in Melbourne as the U.S. lost 4 of the first 5 matches. The only victory coming from Tiger Woods and Justin Thomas. Tiger is the team captain. For the third time this week, a baseball free agent signed a mega deal. Anthony Rendon just led Washington to winning the World Series and now heading to the Angels for 7 years, $245 million, the same package that Steven Strasburg got to stay with the Nationals. Garrett Cole got even more from the Yankees. The Mets signed pitcher Michael Wacha away from the Cardinals. The Jets a big underdog tonight in Baltimore. The concern for Coach Adam Gase, Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson.
That's a guy that caused a lot of problems for the defense. They're doing a lot of really creative things. They're finding ways to really tie in the run game, pass game. Play action stuff's really good. I mean, they just get everybody out of position. Guys are running wide open. He's doing a good job hitting guys in stride, explosive plays all over the place. They're phenomenal at the run game as far as what they're doing.
Ravens have won 9 in a row with the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update. I'm John Stashauer. Amy?
All right, thank you, John. Other stories we're watching today. An executive at Sprint painting a dire outlook for the wireless provider, saying Sprint's phone services won't survive much longer without the proposed tie-up with T-Mobile. Here with more on the story is Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
Jay Bloom is Vice President of Network Development and Engineering, and he says Sprint lacks resources to upgrade networks and has generally weak business prospects. During the third day of a trial in New York, he said, quote, Sprint will not be viable within the next 2 years. The federal judge will determine whether the merger can proceed after several states sued on antitrust concerns. Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Thank you, Charlie. It's 6:38 on Wall Street.
The following commentary is from Bloomberg Opinion.
Our huge wireless merger won't cost you. We promise. I'm Tara LaChapelle, a columnist for Bloomberg Opinion. T-Mobile and Sprint have argued that their merger will benefit customers. They've promised that the combined company won't raise prices, but only for 3 years. Somehow, regulators from the Federal Communications Commission and the Justice Department have accepted this rationale and such weak concessions with a straight face. So in a last line of legal defense, a group of state attorneys general have sued to block the deal. They argue that the antitrust issues still haven't been resolved. The trial began this week, and there's no telling yet which way it will go. But it's hard to see how removing a low-cost rival from an already highly concentrated industry wouldn't have a negative effect on competition. Without Sprint, market power will be concentrated in fewer hands, and the healthy competitive spirit that existed the last few years will surely be diminished. I'm Tara LaChapelle. For more Bloomberg Opinion, please go to Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN Go on the Bloomberg terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
Bloomberg Opinion commentaries can be heard every weekday at this time. Terminal customers can read more at OPIN Go. It is 6:39 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Green Report with Jeff Bellinger.
The European Union has an ambitious 30-year goal. The EU aims to make Europe the world's first climate-neutral continent by 2050. Bloomberg Economics says getting there will take investment on a scale not seen since the 1970s, when new cities were springing up across Europe. The so-called European Green Deal is intended to put the EU on a trajectory toward climate neutrality, with increased emission reduction targets for 2030. But governments are strapped for cash, and Bloomberg Economics figures reaching the 2030 target will require extra investment spending over the next decade of up to 400 billion euros a year, about 2.4% of gross domestic product. As things stand, the spending commitments by EU leaders seem tiny relative to the scale of the task that would place a significant burden on the private sector to do the heavy lifting, and that's a risky approach. That's the Bloomberg Green Business Report. I'm Jeff Bellinger.
Thank you, Jeff. Still ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak, the latest on the impeachment proceedings on Capitol Hill, plus a check on the markets. This is Bloomberg.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients, and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/Take
26. Enjoy Oyster Bay Sauvignon, 12 bottles of Budweiser, Taylor Select Reserve Port, and many, many more for just £7 each. I know it's Christmas, but you're getting overexcited again. Our latest deal, Co-op. It's what we do. Offers subject to availability until stocks last on selected lines. See participating stores for details. Offer ends 3rd of January. Please drink responsibly.
From ESPN and the award-winning producers of The Sterling Affairs comes the latest season of 30 for 30 podcasts. 4 brand new stories of espionage.
He wanted this team to be the Barcelona of women's basketball.
Resilience.
I started to scream. I tried to get away.
Corruption.
It's the culture of win at all costs.
And rebirth.
How will we ever rebuild it?
30 for 30 Podcasts, Season 6. Listen in favorite 30 for 30 podcasts on TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
To LeBron, slam dunk.
The NBA is on TuneIn Premium. Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss. The Miami Heat are taking their talents to Texas to take on the second-year phenom, Luka Doncic, and the Dallas Mavericks.
Back trying to make it 11-2.
This Saturday, the Miami Heat are at the Dallas Mavericks. Tip-off is at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Search NBA on TuneIn to follow your favorite NBA team today.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today. To a network of news and financial information 24 hours a day. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
With the House Judiciary Committee working into late night debating articles of impeachment, attention is already turning to a possible trial in the Senate. Suzanne Malveaux checking on how some senators feel about that.
Spoke to a number of senators, Democrats and Republicans from the Senate Judiciary Committee yesterday, and they all say they want a thorough but speedy trial. One of the Democrats saying just get it over with. Well, today is going to be a historic day. The House Judiciary Committee expected to, in the markup process, vote it out of committee, sending articles of impeachment to the full House.
The committee back in session at 9 Eastern Time. Voters in the United Kingdom are turning out despite cold and rainy weather to decide which party controls Parliament and the Prime Minister's office. If Boris Johnson's Conservative Party wins, he'll try to pull the UK out of the European Union by the end of January. A judge in Fort Worth, Texas will consider today whether a Texas hospital can take 10-month-old Tinsley Lewis off life support despite her family's opposition. Stock futures are up slightly. I'm Michael Toscano.
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow.
Is that good for American finance?
What is happening with the headcount?
Right, where it counts. Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. It is 6:47 on Wall Street. Futures this morning are higher. Let's go to the First Word breaking news desk for today's morning call. Here's Bill Maloney. Bill, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Karen. U.S. futures are posting modest gains right now. Dow futures up 17 points. S&P's gained 2.5, and Nasdaq futures climb by 10. The U.S. 10 yield at 1.8%. Gold is little changed, and Hong Kong rose 1.3% overnight, while European markets are quiet this morning. Note the ECB rate decision is at 7:45, followed by Lagarde's press conference at 8:30. Back in the U.S. on the economic front at 8:30, PPI final demand and initial jobs claims. After the bell last night, Lululemon reported shares are down 4% in the pre-market. And regarding earnings this morning, look for Ciena to report around 7 a.m. Wrapping things up, ConAgra is cut to hold over at Deutsche Bank. Autodesk cut to underweight at JP Morgan. And over at UBS, FedEx was raised to neutral and GE was raised to buy with a price target of 14. Live from the First Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Karen?
All right, Bill, thank you. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type squawk on your terminal, SQUAWK. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's John Tucker with more on what's going on around the world. John.
And good morning, Karen. The House Judiciary Committee set to finish debating articles of impeachment against President Trump today. They'll send the impeachment articles to the full House for a vote next week. Americans are projected to fall seriously behind on their credit card bills at the highest rate in a decade. According to a forecast by TransUnion, the share of credit card borrowers at least 90 days past due on their accounts will probably tick up to just over 2% next year. And November was a good month for New York landlords. Apartment units in Manhattan leased for a median $3,502 a month after subtracting the value of concessions, just $19 short of the record high. Sports, Jets play the Ravens in Thursday Night Football. Basketball, the Knicks beat the Warriors in overtime, and the Celtics fall to the Pacers. Hockey, the Capitals beat the Bruins. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker, and this is Bloomberg. Amy.
All right, thank you, John. We're live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Brokers Studios. It is 6:49 on Wall Street, and it's time now to check what is going on in Washington, D.C. And some of the top stories in our nation's capital include the House Judiciary Committee holding a 2-day markup session, just like John explained, debating 2 articles of impeachment before they're sent to the full House for a vote. Also, Bloomberg News has learned Senate Republicans say there's an early consensus is starting to build within their ranks for a short impeachment trial. It would see the Republican-led chamber vote on a likely acquittal of President Trump. More on that just ahead. And the Federal Reserve signaling interest rates remaining unchanged through 2020. Let's get more on these and some other stories. Bloomberg News Washington reporter Kathleen Hunter joining us now. Kathleen, it is a pleasure. Thanks for taking the time with us. There's a lot to get to here. Let's start with the impeachment timeline. So right now, the House Judiciary Committee marking up these articles. The debate is ongoing. To what end? Where are they going with this?
Well, it looks like there's likely to be a party line vote potentially as soon as this evening, and that would set up a vote in the full House next week. Now, we know that there are 2 narrowly tailored articles of impeachment that are going to be in front of the committee today, and I think that is very specifically been done by Democrats to keep the debate as focused as they can. And so I wouldn't expect a lot of Republican defections today. This is likely to be a party line vote, but I think that's certainly a dynamic that's worth watching, and this is really just kind of setting the stage for what we know is coming next in the full House.
So that vote could come as early as today?
That's right. It sounds like the vote could go, it could be pushed into tomorrow, but we could expect it perhaps as soon as late this evening.
And we know that from the House, it goes to the Senate. That's where the trial will be. And the GOP already signaling they're ready to move this through very quickly toward the end of the year, the beginning of next year. What are you hearing as far as Capitol Hill and the strategy in the Senate?
Well, I think for both sides, we know for Democrats, there's been an incentive to kind of get this done before the presidential primary season starts on February 3rd with the Iowa caucuses. And I think that the same is true now. We're hearing from Republicans that really the incentive, the political incentive at least, is to try to go ahead with the trial as quickly as possible in January, with the idea being that it's essentially impossible to imagine a scenario where a Republican-controlled Senate convicts the president. And so that allows them to basically dispense with this matter as quickly as possible and then go forward into the presidential, contest or the presidential election year, essentially saying that their guy, Donald Trump, has been acquitted or is absolved of any wrongdoing. So that's certainly going to be the narrative coming out of the Republican side. It's obviously going to differ from the Democratic narrative, but, I think that both sides have a incentive to just be over and done with this and to try to spin their own narratives for most of the election year.
Throughout this entire process, Kathleen, there have been criticisms about whether Congress can walk and chew gum at the same time. With all of this going on, the White House, though, is continuing forward with the business of government, an initiative they're pushing forward today, a summit on child care and family leave. Tell us a little bit about what this initiative would involve, what folks are looking forward to.
Well, I think, it's important to also remember when we think about this summit that we're heading into an election year, we're likely to see this has been an issue that really Ivanka Trump, the president's senior advisor and daughter, has been kind of a poster child for. And so I think that this, from a political standpoint, is really meant to kind of emphasize that Republicans, generally the Trump administration specifically, has issues that pertain to working families front and center. And that cuts into what's likely to be the Democratic message in the election year, which is that they're the party that's better suited to help middle-class voters and working families. And so I think that's really, we're seeing the White House try to counter that with today's summit.
And we'll see some of those details released later today from the White House as we get closer to that summit time. Also, when, that's what the White House is doing as all of the impeachment stuff is going on. And then there's what's going on Capitol Hill. Congress is going to be leaving very soon for the end of the year, and they still have to get that budget deal through. Are we going to see a budget, a continuing resolution? And what sort of timeline are we looking at?
Well, I think December 20th, which is a week from tomorrow, a week from Friday, is the kind of the decision day. That's when the current government funding runs out. It's also when Congress is looking to leave for the year. And so I think that right now the goal is still to get through a more comprehensive spending package than just kind of kicking the can down the road with another continuing resolution. It sounds like appropriators are somewhat optimistic they can do that. But of course, the devil's always in the details with these sorts of things. And we'll have to see, if they're able to come to some kind of a resolution on the outstanding spending issues and order to get that done. I think that usually the pressure of the end of the year tends to create some, quick action in Congress, and sometimes these issues are kind of magically resolved, but other times, we are looking at a divided Congress that's dealing with an impeachment inquiry. So, getting compromise in a bipartisan fashion might be difficult.
One of the remarkable things that needs to be pointed out about this is that, for the most part, lawmakers do seem to be on the same page when it comes to a budget. Everybody has the same end goal, is just how to get there. The big sticking point, of course, being funding for the president's border wall, and now a ruling from the courts that say that the president can't use the military construction funds that they had allocated for military construction to build the border wall. Is that going to impact the next steps for Congress, slow down these budget talks?
It certainly could, because, that's kind of been the administration's strategy thus far in terms of providing kind of a back channel way of funding the wall. If they're no longer going to be able to do that, that might put the onus on Trump and Republicans to insist upon specific funding for the wall. And so that certainly would make the negotiations more difficult, because Democrats have essentially said, going back 2 years now, that that's a non-starter. That's the issue that we've had several government shutdowns over already. And so I wouldn't imagine another shutdown is in the offing here, but it might be that we end up with a continuing resolution, because that issue is just intractable at this point.
No, another shutdown would not be something that would be in the offing, considering that this is going to be an election year just ahead.
I think that's absolutely true. I don't think either side has any incentive at this point to have any kind of a shutdown, but I also think that, that could be the deciding factor. This dispute over wall funding could end up being the deciding factor between a broader spending agreement and a continuing resolution, and that's a dynamic to certainly watch going forward.
All right, and the clock is ticking. As you said, they have to be done by 1 week from Friday. Thank you so much. Bloomberg News Washington reporter Kathleen Hunter, always a pleasure. And you can read more about these stories on Bloomberg.com or on the Bloomberg Terminal. And as a reminder, you can follow all of the latest on Bloomberg Radio in Washington at Bloomberg 99.1 and 105.7 FM HD2. Karen.
All right, Amy, thank you. It is 6:56 on Wall Street. It's time for the Bloomberg Small Business Report, and here's John Tucker.
In 2011, Jocelyn Gaynors founded Family Recovery Program. This small business with 28 employees stands out because it's a nonprofit. The goal is to reduce the time that kids spend in foster care by helping their parents recover from drug and alcohol abuse.
Family Recovery Program comes in as an advocate and wraps really intensive services around the families, so that when the parents are ready and they're practicing their sobriety and they're getting some stability in their lives, we help DSS or the Department of Social Services make decisions to help bring those children home.
She's reunited 700 families. Still, 45% of the time, mom and dad don't work out. Even as a nonprofit, Family Recovery Program of Baltimore faces the same challenges as any other small business. And she says she doesn't have a product to sell, except the opportunity to strengthen families and make people productive members of society. And that's the Bloomberg Small Business Report.
All right, John Tucker, thank you. And futures, they're higher this morning. We are looking out for a European Central Bank policy decision this morning. Ahead of that, stocks in Europe are also higher. S&P futures right now are up 2 points. Dow futures up 15. NASDAQ futures are up 10. The DAX in Germany is up 0.1%. 10-year Treasury down 2/32, yield 1.79%. The yield on the 2-year 1.60%. And NYMEX crude oil is up about 0.4%. It's at $59.02 a barrel. And Bloomberg surveillance is straight ahead. Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrell in London today. For Amy Morris, I'm Karen Moscow, and this is Bloomberg.
Influential. For the independent bookseller who found you that first edition. For the baker who brings the smell of freshly baked breads to your door.
And for the barista who never needs to ask your name.
We've all got a part to play.
Every little tap keeps your high street alive.
And helps your communities thrive.
So if you love where you live, shop small.
Shopping on your local high street can make a big difference. Shop small. Only by American Express.
Far wing elevates. Triple bucket.
The war of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut it.
The sideline, the Van Fleet for 3.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on the
Search
right.
NBA Today to start listening.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
I think the U.S. is going in for a couple of years of very, very strong growth.
The deficit by early in the next decade will start to become a real problem for the markets.
Finance.
The consumer is really strong right now.
We don't realize how good times are now.
Investment.
The biggest problem that people have in investing in stocks is that they get out of the market.
It's not supposed to be easy. Anyone who finds it easy is stupid.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow on Bloomberg Radio.
From the City of London, for our audience worldwide, good morning. Good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. Coming up on the programme, Chair Powell signalling the Fed is on pause through 2020. President Lagarde making her central bank debut in Frankfurt, Germany. And Britain heading to the polls for its second election since the referendum. From our studios on Queen Victoria Street, hello Thursday. Here is your Thursday price action. Equity futures firmer by 0.1% on the S&P 500, up around about 3 points. In the bond market, to give you a feel of the Treasury market, yields lower through the session yesterday. Today, yields higher by a single basis point on the 10-year to 180, relatively unchanged at the front end of the curve. Your 2-year note 161-ish, and in foreign exchange, G10 shaping up as follows. A little bit of dollar weakness out there against the euro, just a little bit. The Swiss franc is bid, and the Aussie dollar is your outperformance. Good morning to you all then. What a couple of days we've got coming up. Britain going to the polls today. Those results will come a little bit later this evening. A central bank decision from the Fed yesterday, and the ECB, Tom Keene, front and centre today.
And really front and centre, and we just with the news flow, and particularly with the election in the United Kingdom, we've been really remiss about covering the ECB, and all of a sudden it's right on top of us. I thought our Matt Miller was extraordinary out front on that great day in Frankfurt, getting to where we'll be in 45 minutes about we really don't know what we're going to see. He mentioned many of the Draghi office people, the staff are still there. We've had a lot of maneuvering and massaging, but what are we going to hear at that press conference? We just don't know.
Looking forward to that, and looking back as well, Tom, at a really interesting Federal Reserve meeting. It wasn't meant to be interesting. The news conference, though, I found fascinating. Several comments from Chairman Powell that really set us up for a Fed that's going to do nothing for 2020 and maybe even longer. We thought that at 3.5%, maybe wages would start picking up, inflation would start accelerating. Yeah. There's now an appreciation, there's far more slack out there. On top of that, the reaction function has really shifted. When the inflation comes, and if it comes, this is a Fed that's not going to move to hike interest rates for quite a while.
I opened the 6 o'clock television with that because I think this new word slack is not associated with Chairman Powell. And yet there it is, an echo of those speeches that Chair Yellen gave at the Economic Club of New York. I remember at the Economic Club of New York, somebody asked her about slack, and she changed. When she gets angry, her voice changes to Eastern Brooklyn. There's a shift in the accent.
I don't remember Janet Yellen ever getting angry.
Oh, yeah. On the word slack, her voice changes. She gets that Brooklyn accent going.
I would say equally as important as the 3 rate cuts we've had through 2019, just as big a change in the last 12 months, the shift in the Fed's reaction function. And I think Powell went some way yesterday to completing that pivot in the last year.
Did Steve Major do okay on getting out front of what?
I think Steve Major's always doing better than okay over the last couple of years. Pleased to say he's with us in the studios here in London. Steve Major, HSBC Global Head of Fixed Income Research. Good morning. Good day to you, Steve.
Good morning.
Your thoughts as you reflect on Chairman Powell in the last 24 hours. Where does it take us through next year and beyond?
How do you know when a central banker is lying?
How do you know?
His lips move. So the point of that is that we're not going to take too much from what we're told. So for me, building an investment strategy around a central bank head who tells me that they're on hold isn't going to take me very far. And if I'd built my strategy around what he told me this time last year, I would have been short the market when it was rallying. Right. So I'm not saying that's the only way that we do things, because it's easy to be contrarian. It's very easy to just do the opposite. It's just that I don't get a lot of guidance. I mean, he doesn't know what's going to happen. Your point about the reaction function is well made, because rather than waiting for this grand announcement in Q2 2020 on the Fed's framework review, which they've already delayed once, it is instead seeping into the reaction function in real time. So we now know that when you get an upside surprise, as we've just seen, the Fed's could do nothing. They might even cut. Challenge for me is, how do you communicate that to spot traders and bond traders and others, because it's frankly quite patronizing to explain to them those kind of things, because they're all educated to respond in different ways. So my best interpretation of all of this is yields probably go up before they fall dramatically. I'm going to take any increase in yield from here as a buying opportunity, because I think we'll end the year with lower yields. I need some tips in the portfolio. Inflation protection makes a lot of sense here. A very good diversification.
Let's talk about that. A call option on the inflation story.
Yeah.
Why, Steve? Is that market positioning, or is that just you think things are going to materialise a certain way in the coming year?
I'll tell you why it's a call option, because if things continue like they are, which is a good possibility, then each basis point yield shift in the Treasury is mimicked by the tips. So the tips and the Treasuries are trading tick for tick. If the yields keep sinking, the tips are going to keep up with the Treasuries. But if something happens, like inflation was to surge, you're going to get paid on the inflation side. There's a risk to this view. It could be hugely wrong if the S&P goes down 20%, because then you won't be able to sell your tips.
Steve Major, long ago and far away, at Credit Suisse had that beautiful algorithm where they would show a time series of interest rates, and they'd show along the way how everybody got wrong. The move was going to be to higher rates. There were whispers up of hires. Wrong. Do you feel like it's the same way in this call for higher inflation? Is it just another redux of a 10-year, 12-year path?
Yeah, that is right. And everyone's thinking inflation has to go up because it's low. Central banks are trying to talk it up, but they're not doing anything. There's no action, is there really?
In honor of Paul Volcker, this is really important. Is there evidence a central bank can reflate? Mr. Volcker proved we could disinflate, but is there any evidence they can lead to some level of inflation that's appropriate?
Well, central bankers know they can create inflation. They know it. They have to print money. Now, that printing of money hasn't actually happened so far, because, again, mainstream thinking will confuse QE with money printing.
Correct.
When you know it's never been anything like it. So we're not there yet, but central banks know that they can create inflation. And some kind of step towards a radical government that puts more of a constraint on the reaction function, that could drive inflation.
Steve, you're going to stick with us, and we're going to talk about the ECB in just a moment. I do want to reflect on the year we've had and the year ahead. It's that time of the year when Steve Major goes out visiting clients, and Steve Major says rates are going to go lower, and typically you get a ton of pushback and then rates go lower as the year grows older. Yeah. Are you finding that the world is coming around to your perspective, your point of view, just a little bit more in the last 12 months?
Yeah.
And how does that make you reflect on your own framework for looking at this bond market? When you've been the outlier, the contrarian voice for so long, and then the world starts coming towards you, does it make you feel uncomfortable?
Yes, and the current presentation is called Straw Man, which for the American listeners, the straw man is a fallacy that you construct so you can tear it down. And the straw man, for me, is higher yields and bear steepening. So I want to play with that scenario, because that scenario has to be fully constructed, because it offsets the Japan scenario, which is we go to zero and we stay there for a long time. So these two polar opposites are informing the current yield, the yield level today of 1.8. It's a bit inconvenient for me, because I'm a bit too close to my forecast level. So I'm having to be patient. I want yields to go up so I can buy again.
It was an exciting week here in London. Of course, I've done a lot. We were going to go to the National Art Gallery and see the Gauguin. And then there was Arsenal West Ham.
Are you going to wind up Steve Major?
And
can you do this at the end of the next segment?
It was like a balanced, fair match. It was like, an ECB press conference. Boom, it was a hat. Steve, what hat was it? Arsenal was good or West Ham was challenged?
Yeah, both teams are poor. And West Ham were in front for 60-odd minutes, and then they collapsed. And there's no single point I can focus on. It's like markets. Stuff happens. You get inflection points, and stuff happens. It's just
how do they turn it around in the sprawl of London football? I mean, the Tottenham built a stadium, but they can't put a decent team in it. We've proven that.
Yeah, well, with West Ham, we have to be patient. The difference between West Ham, Chelsea, Tottenham, and Arsenal is that we don't have that high expectations. The problem that they have, the problem for Arsenal is that they expect to win things. They feel entitled, whereas we have a bit of fun, really.
And you also have an atmosphere in the stadium, which is something these other London clubs don't have. They're like libraries. If you ever make it, it's absolutely fantastic to go and watch West Ham.
I've heard Tottenham is deadly.
I watched them last season, West Ham versus Chelsea. Bit of a London derby, fantastic game, great atmosphere, just phenomenal atmosphere. I just think the other clubs have priced the fans out of the game, which has killed the atmosphere of several of these big teams.
And what's great is this is more fun to talk about than the election.
Because we can't talk about the election.
If you were wondering, folks, there's some very strict rules here. It's hilarious. Twitter is lit up like a candle. Bloomberg News doing a great job. Therese Raphael publishing today in Bloomberg Opinion. But on radio and TV, for all media in this United Kingdom, there's no discussion of the election. There's much more to talk about, including an ECB meeting. We'll look for that in 35 minutes. This is Bloomberg.
And now for the news from New York City, let's say good morning to John Tucker. Good morning, John.
Hey, John and Tom. The House Judiciary Committee set to finish debating articles of impeachment against President Trump today, with a likely party line vote to send the resolution to the floor of the House. Senate Republicans say there's an early consensus building within their ranks for a short impeachment trial that could see the GOP-led chamber vote on a likely acquittal of President Trump without hearing from any witnesses. And Senator Elizabeth Warren overestimating the proceeds of her wealth tax by at least $1 trillion. That's according to new estimates from the Penn-Wharton budget model. It's raising questions about the Democratic presidential candidate's plans to fund her sweeping proposals to reshape the U.S. economy. Global news 24 hours a day on the air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker, and this is Bloomberg John and Tom.
John Tucker, thanks so much. Futures up 2, Dow futures up 10. As John mentioned, dollar weaker off the Powell press conference. DXY 97.16. A demonstrable move. Euro 111.33. This is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Imagine.
Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6s with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
The Honda Jazz, the car that feels fabulously small on the outside, yet deceptively big on the inside, with its incredible storage solutions and magic folding seats. Not to mention the suite of advanced safety features. And now with the small but big Jazz event, it's available with 0% APR representative and 5 years complimentary servicing until January 31st. Visit your local dealer to find out more. Honda dealers are credit brokers, not lenders. Finance provided by Honda Finance Europe, authorized and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Terms and conditions apply.
This year, make Christmas shopping a pleasure. Come to Bicester Village, with over 160 beautiful boutiques set in a fairy tale Cotswolds Christmas garden, glittering by day and magically illuminated by night. After a day's hard work finding the perfect gifts, reward yourself with festive menus and cocktails at Farm Shop Restaurant and Cafe by Soho House & Co. or a delicious dinner at Cafe Wolseley. Bicester Village, the perfect place for Christmas shopping.
Owning your own business doesn't automatically make you an accounting expert. So it's good to know that when you choose to manage your money with Sage, you don't just get great business management at your fingertips, you get great local support too. Anytime, anywhere. Simple solutions from Sage. Trusted by over 1 million British businesses to manage finances, operations, and people. Find out more at sage.com/automate.
From Bloomberg Television, here's Taylor Riggs.
We just spoke about Glassdoor's annual list of the best places to work. And while we saw big tech names like Google and Facebook drop out of the top 10, we saw others rise to the top. DocuSign is one of those companies landing the number 3 spot. Here to discuss, DocuSign CEO Dan Springer. Dan, what makes your company stand out? Why would I want to come and work for you?
Well, I think our employees using Glassdoor as a great reference have spoken that there's a couple things we've gotten right. One is we've created an exciting vision, the DocuSign Agreement Cloud, to really go beyond that signature piece that most people know us for, to have a broader platform to build and be part of sort of the next big thing is one. Two is I think we, with our DocuSign Impact investment, have given people a reason to be proud of working at the company for our commitment to the community.
We just heard from Andrew Chamberlain that culture starts from the top. What's your number one piece of advice in terms of the culture you're setting, the tone that you're setting?
Well, I think it's two things. One, I'd say go to a company that's already fabulous, like DocuSign, that has a fantastic culture. It makes your job a lot easier as a leader, and I did that. But in terms of the small part I've played to try to improve the culture, I think it's about inclusiveness and listening. And we do a lot to really understand what our employees want to make this the best place they've ever worked or to do the work of their lives, as we say, and then try to deliver on those components.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. It is 7:17 on Wall Street, and Bloomberg Daybreak is out on customer terminals, bringing you all the news you need to start your day. Let's get a check of the latest headlines with Hannah George at the Bloomberg Daybreak desk. Good morning, Hannah.
Good morning, Karen. Christine Lagarde sets the tone for her tenure as head of the ECB today. Her first policy meeting is unlikely to deliver breaking news, but her press conference will give a flavour of her style. Israel's political dysfunction means a third election in less than a year. Early this morning, the Knesset officially disbanded itself and set elections for March 2nd. The US election is the biggest risk for next year. That's according to JP Morgan, which recommends a risk-on investment allocation. The firm's top trades are Japan's banks, German stocks and emerging markets. And Lululemon issued profit guidance that fell short with investors. Double-digit sales growth in the quarter wasn't enough to boost a stock that's already nearly doubled this year. For all the news you need to start your day, check out Daybreak on your mobile phone on the Bloomberg Anywhere app. Karen.
All right, Hannah, thank you. S&P futures are a little change now this morning, up a point. Dow futures now down 5, and NASDAQ futures are up 5. 10-year Treasury, little change, yield 1.79%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.60%. NYMEX crude oil up 0.25% or 14 cents at $58.90 a barrel, and COMEX gold is up 0.33% or $4.80 at $14.79.80 an ounce. The euro 1.1135 against the dollar. British pound 1.3171, and that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and John.
Karen, thanks so much. John Farrow and Tom Keene, our studios, Queen Victoria Street in London. You could feel it coming out of the hotel today, the excitement across London for this election. Again, we are precluded from speaking of the election until the polls close. John, 10 sharp.
10 p.m. sharp,
10
local
p.m.
time.
sharp,
You make me nervous every time you bring the topic up.
No, it's fine. It's fine. There's these rules that every media outlet can't speak of TV and radio of the election.
Yeah, to the point that sometimes it can be a criminal offence. So
yeah, well, that's okay. I'll visit you. But John Farrow leading our coverage with Anna Edwards tonight, 10 p.m. Look for that. Looking forward to that. Stephen Major with us right now. And Steve, I want to go to the credit market because John's got nothing to do here with the high yield show. What's it called? The real yield?
It's called Real Yield. It's on a Friday, and you know that.
Okay, thank you. Let us talk credit market right now. It was a wonderful year, a glorious year. Total return reigned supreme, every credit class. Does it get more nuanced? Do you have to be more picky next year in what kind of credit you acquire?
Yeah, so sovereigns and IG, high yield, all did very well. On a risk-adjusted basis, you're quite right, high yield was doing particularly well. So going into 2020, difficult to imagine that you're going to get the same level of return. And I'm talking nearly 10% on average for some of these markets. So I'm looking for better chances to buy. I don't think going in fully long these markets today is the right way to start 2020. So any kind of backup will be interesting. Credit looks vulnerable because the indicators we look at, which include the cycle, what's happening with consumer confidence, the shape of the curve, default rates, etc., all of it's pointing towards a credit bear market coming up in the next 1 or 2 years. So we need to be cautious about loading up on credit with rates so low, yield so low, and spread so tight.
What does a credit bear market look like, Steve, if that materialises in the next 1 to 2 years?
Yeah, well, it's probably not going to be too big a spread widening. It doesn't have to be too big. Imagine if you had 50 to 100 basis points of spread widening in terms of total return, when each basis point is worth 10 cents, for example, you're looking at losing all the money that you made last year. So you could easily lose 10%. Which is enough to hurt people.
So we had a similar move 12 months ago.
Yeah.
You expect another period of that, and what do you think is going to drive it? Because we've had some aggressive easing from central banks through 2019. I'm just wondering what drives that, even if the Fed keeps stepping in.
This is the normal question I get. What's the trigger? What's the catalyst? And as you know, in markets, stuff happens. You get inflection points. The butterfly's wings flap. Chaos theory, etc. For us, on the macro side, it's inflation and how the market responds to above target inflation, with the Fed saying it's on hold, and then it's particular sectors. Now, one sector we pick out is autos. When you look at the fundamental backdrop for the auto sector, it's not looking good. That hasn't been shown up so far in earnings numbers. So that's one to watch. Don't forget, back in 2016, it was energy that was the sector that led the credit sell-off. You're talking about that one, I think, going into 2017.
15-16 was pretty ugly for energy,
16, yeah. So it could be one sector. This is the point. To pretend that you know what it is very deterministic. To say this happens and that happens next.
Of course, but if we pick a sector, help me understand that specific sector. So we have big auto player like Ford, Triple B over in the United States. You're thinking about the big auto manufacturers or further down the supply chain? Because the names in Triple C and energy, for instance, in the United States, they're small energy players. They're not the big names. How are you thinking about it more specifically, Steve? Where does it show up?
Yeah, well, it could be here in Europe, and you just think about Germany as an economy overly dependent on manufacturing and exporting in particular, and the car industry. It's just massive. Have they geared up sufficiently for the ESG challenge we have? Are they overly dependent on diesel at the current time? All these are the questions, right?
Very quickly, that brings up a delicate issue, which is you have to actually review the credit quality and credit path of your underlying fixed income coupon. Have we gotten lazy? Have people given up actual Dan Fuss, Loomis sales like credit analysis?
Well, yes. It's fair to say that on the sell side, there's less and less investment grade credit research. And there's not very much high yield either. So much of the research, the intellect is now on the buy side. The sell side can only really be thematic. And that's a structural change in the industry. You're quite right.
This has been wonderful.
Steve, great to see you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate you, David Bloom, and the rest of your team's work this year. HSBC.
Did we skip the ECB? Did we skip the ECB?
Yeah, you know.
Okay.
Do you want to? Pick it up here.
We've got like 30 seconds left.
We can do it in French in honor of Madame Lagarde. Steve Major, thank you so much.
Thank you.
With HSBC, and of course that important meeting coming up as well. Right now in the markets, it's been a very quiet 10 days or so. There's a lot of times I do one data screen, not two data screens on television. Here right now, a churn to the market. I note Brent crude 64.11. That global oil price 64.11. Stay with us. From London, John Farrow and Tom Keene, this is Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. We'll watch shares of Lululemon. The yoga wear maker reported another quarter of double-digit sales growth, but shares fell. The company also reported the 11th straight profit beat, but now it's suffering from investor expectations for perfection. Apple's iPhone will avert a $150 tariff if the U.S. decides not to implement another round of levies on Chinese imports this Sunday, when new tariffs are slated to kick in. But even if the tariffs are delayed, the broader trade war has exposed a weakness at the heart of Apple's business, which relies on suppliers and manufacturing partners, mostly based in China. U.S.-China trade remains in focus as investors await news on whether those new tariffs can be avoided on Sunday. The Fed left interest rates unchanged yesterday as expected and also signaled that rates won't change through 2020. Stocks were slightly higher with the benchmark S&P up 0.3%. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's environment of market volatility, Pershing's Prime Services is well positioned to support the needs of hedge funds and other alternative investment managers. Whether it's customized financing or securities lending solutions, platform access, or business expansion, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and agile enough to meet your evolving demands. Pershing helps to solve the needs of clients by advocating for them, providing unwavering strength, deep supply, and award-winning service that is at the core of everything we do. Find out what sets Pershing's prime brokerage team apart.
Learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers offered by BNY Mellon's Pershing. Visit our website at Pershing.com. Pershing LLC, member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Christmas. A time for celebrating, unwrapping, and unwinding. Capture every moment with an epic iPhone 6S with a 12-megapixel camera. Now only $12.99 a month from Tesco Mobile, saving you £72. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Saving £2 per month over 36 months was £14.99. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Today, your information is more exposed than ever. When you shop, sign in, or browse, you could be vulnerable to cybercriminals. More online threats demand more protection. That's why new Norton 360 provides multiple layers of protection, combining device security, secure VPN, password manager, and cloud backup all in one solution. Get new Norton 360, starting at $24.99 for the first year.
Want to power through your projects for less? Get 20% off power tools at the B&Q Tool Shop, like the Bosch 18-volt 2-battery combi drill. Was £80, now only £64. You can do it when you B&Q it. Excludes the DeWalt 18-volt 4-amp combi drill, Dremel 3000 15-piece and power tool clearance. Ends 24th of November. In-store only on 23rd and 24th of November, subject to availability.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour. But we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Those up, dart toward the end zone. Caught, ball, touchdown.
NFL fans, hear every live game on TuneIn Premium.
Mahomes throwing off the back foot. He wants McCall. Hardman, he's got the catch at the 15. Jukes at the 10. 5, touchdown.
Today, hear the home and away call as the New York Jets visit the Baltimore Ravens at 8:20 p.m. Eastern.
It's a block, 20, 25, 30. It's a foot race, 40.
At 50. Home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds, or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From the City of London, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We're live on Bloomberg Radio, 2 hours away from the opening bell. The news you need to know this hour. In 15 minutes from now, the European Central Bank makes its first policy decision under President Christine Lagarde. She will then hold a news conference at 8:30 Eastern Time, which will bring you live on Bloomberg Radio. The decision coming a day after the Fed signaled interest rates won't change through 2020. Elsewhere, Saudi Aramco has reached a milestone. Shares jumped by the daily limit once again to push the oil giant's valuation beyond $2 trillion. And here in the UK, voting is underway in the general election. We'll bring you results and analysis and special election coverage later today. Catch that at 5 p.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg Radio and on Bloomberg TV. There's some of the stories we'll be talking about through the next couple of hours, then right here on Bloomberg Surveillance. For the news elsewhere, let's cross over to New York to catch up with John Tucker. Good morning, John.
Yeah, good morning, John. The House Judiciary Committee set to finish debating articles of impeachment against President Trump today, with a likely party line vote to send the resolution to the floor of the House. Joe Biden says he would reverse Donald Trump's immigration policies during his first 100 days in office. Biden issued his immigration plan months after most of his Democratic rivals. And UN Ambassador Kelly Craft is warning North Korea could test launch intercontinental ballistic missiles, which are designed to attack the United States. For the first time since the early 1900s, more Americans are dying at home rather than in hospitals. Deaths in nursing homes have also declined. This according to a report in the New England Journal of Medicine. Doctors say the trend does reflect the rise in home hospice care. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker, and this is Bloomberg. Jonathan.
John Tucker, thank you very much, sir. It's time now for the Bloomberg NBC Sports Report. Here is John Stashower.
Jonathan, the Knicks and Warriors, the two worst teams in the NBA. Knicks, of course, have been bad for most of the last 2 decades. Golden State's made the finals 5 straight years, but all the injuries and defections, nothing like that anymore. The Knicks able to beat the Warriors 124-122 in overtime to end a 10-game losing streak. Marcus Morris with 36 points. At Barclays, Nets blew a 20-point lead, lost to Charlotte 113-108. That ends Brooklyn's 3-game win streak. Devontae Graham 40-40 for the Hornets. Good win for Rutgers, 72-65 over Wisconsin. Geo Baker scored 22. The last Thursday night game of the NFL season, it figures to be a mismatch. John Harbaugh's Ravens, a big favorite to beat the Jets.
You know, our guys don't take anybody for granted. You never can, you never should, but certainly not a team that's won 4 of the last 5 games. It has players like Le'Veon Bell and Anderson and Darnold on offense, and our guys do understand that. I do appreciate that about our guys.
Baltimore's won 9 in a row, can clinch the division with a win. Another big baseball signing, Anthony Rendon with the Angels, total package of nearly $250 million. The Mets signed pitcher Michael Wacha. With the Bloomberg NBC Sports Update, I'm John Stashower. Jonathan?
John Stashower, thank you, sir. John there with the sports. You've had the news. Let's get you some price action, shall we, this Thursday. We are around about 12 minutes away from an ECB decision from the new President, Christine Lagarde. She will then deliver her first news conference in Frankfurt, Germany, around about 45 minutes after that. Ahead of that, this is what the equity market looks like in the United States. S&P 500 futures totally unchanged, up by around about a single point on the S&P. Outside of that, the bond market bid in yesterday's session following a dovish Chairman Powell press conference. Yields today unchanged at 179 on a 10-year, 160 on a 2-year note. And in foreign exchange, on the day of the general election in the UK, the pound just slightly weaker, cable down by 0.2%. This is Bloomberg.
From our offices at Queen Victoria Street near Mansion House in the City of London, this is Bloomberg Surveillance. John Farrell and Tom Keene, thank you for being with us coast to coast across America today. The Bloomberg NJIT STEM Report brought to you by VentureLink at NJIT, a business accelerator offering the resources and support that tech companies need to thrive. More at njit.edu/entrepreneurship. Here's Amy Morris.
All right. Good morning, Tom and John. Here's what's making news in science, technology, engineering, and math. The U.S. government needs a holistic approach for advancing the development of artificial intelligence. That's according to experts gathered in Washington this week for a panel event. They say advances in AI are needed to protect U.S. national security and maintain a global leadership position in that technology. According to a report from the Atlantic Council, AI-related threats include cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, and targeted surveillance. Cisco Systems is entering the chip market. The company has started supplying switch chips to major data center operators, including Microsoft and Facebook. Now, previously, Cisco had only been using its chips and components from its own machines. The move opens up a new avenue to win orders from some of Cisco's largest networking equipment customers. Blue Origin has successfully launched a reusable New Shepard spacecraft on a suborbital flight. That was a test flight. It brings the company, owned by Jeff Bezos, one step closer to soon taking human tourists into space. Blue Origin has so far reused 2 boosters 5 times each consecutively. This latest launch marks a record with a booster completing its 6th flight to space and back. And that is the Bloomberg NJIT STEM Report. I'm Amy Morris. Tom and John.
Amy, thanks so much. 5 things you need to know to start your day. Brought to you by Interactive Brokers. Their margin loans start at 3.06%. They decrease for larger loan values. Rates subject to change. Learn more at ibkr.com/compare. This is a huge deal, John. It's an ECB meeting. It's about now. And if I look back to the beginning, Trichet, Duisenberg, and the others, it sets a tone. I'm going to look out 5 years.
I would agree with you. We've lost the former chief economist of the ECB. We've lost the former president, Mario Draghi. Benoit Cœuré is about to step down as well, I believe, at year end. So at the turn of the year, we're going to have lost Benoit Cœuré as well. It's going to be a totally different ECB in terms of the people there.
Is not Benoit Cœuré.
No, she's not.
That's
and
a key point.
She's not Mario Draghi, and it's inevitable when we get that news conference today, there will be comparisons. She's a fantastic communicator. We can all agree on that, but she's a different kind of communicator. Mario Draghi was slick, technical to the point, and rarely ever made a misstep in the news conference.
Matt Miller killed it today at Frankfurt. He had a lot of value add on stuff I didn't know about ECB. You have lived Frankfurt maybe as much as anyone in this building at Queen Victoria Street. It's cultural. at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's really difficult to change the institution. I think what happens is the institution changes the people, with the exception of one man. I think Mario Draghi did a tremendous amount to move the ECB away from the Bundesbank. It's going to be a big ask for Christine Lagarde to make it an even more different central bank in the years to come.
First order, MIT, economics PhD, massive academic cred from Draghi, and Madame Lagarde brings a different portfolio to the test.
She's a politician, and I think that's where the focus is going to be, her relationship with the politicians. Can they get the others that have fiscal space to use that fiscal space to do more and step up? That is her challenge.
I want to conflate this because I want to get to our final one. Steve Major, always a huge... We could just do a 5 things you need to know, folks, on Mr. Major. What do you do the year after a bond bull market? We talk in equities about this nonstop. I never hear anybody talk about what do you do the morning after a double-digit bond return?
He's used to leaning against the crowd. The crowd saying high yield. Steve sits there year in, year out as the head of research on the bond side at HSBC and says, I think yields are going lower. I think this is a year where things have slightly changed, Tom, and people have started to capitulate. We've got Bob Michael at JP Morgan Asset Management looking for 1% on a 10-year, on a 12-month horizon.
Well,
that's a big call.
Quickly here, I'm glad you bring that up because my essay of the year, if I had to guess right now, is Jan Moyes in the summer. With that, not forecast, but the model of how you get through Bob Michael's forecast.
So let's get to the Bob Michael call, the essence of it. The belief that policy rates are going lower, they're not going higher, and the belief that 10-year rates will drift towards policy rates in those respective countries. Seen that in the United States.
With nominal GDP.
10-year basically on top of the policy rate. See that in Europe too.
There's important things that we do in London. I have a vast social life in London. It's incredible. I'm kidding, folks. Hotel, office, hotel.
Slave.
Last night, for the first time, I saw, is it UEFA Champions Football? It's
UEFA Champions League football.
I've never seen this. Wednesday night, there's like 12 games on. Everybody's going hysterical.
And
they
Tuesday
got
night
too. Tuesday they do it as well. Is it bigger than Premier League that we see in America?
So this is the best of the best. So if you come in the top 4 in the Premier League, you qualify for the Champions League in the following year.
The others don't. West Ham doesn't.
No. So the best clubs in each league get together and they play a knockout tournament every year. It's called the Champions League. They have a little group stage ahead of it. So there's 4 of them in a group. They play each other home and away. Last night's games were the last games before the knockout stages. Then we go into the knockout stages, quarterfinal,
and that's coming up.
Yeah, it's the knockout. It's the first round of the knockout stages coming up. Then the quarterfinal.
Is it
then
bigger
the semis,
money, bigger audience than Premier League?
The further in you get, the more money you get. Premier League money, though, Tom, you can be a top-tier club in Europe and you can be a lower-tier club in the Premier League and still get just as much money. This is where the money is, the domestic league in a Premiership.
And I saw Juventus. I didn't see the game, but they won. The Tots lost, but Steve Major told me the Tots were supposed to lose because
they qualify anyway. They're in the knockout stages. I love that you're up to speed on this.
Every time I come here, forget the National Gallery, forget the Royal Academy of Art.
Just focus on football.
Just focus on football and UEFA champion. Where else are you going to hear this, folks? People driving off the road on I-80.
Or switching the station.
This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
The lifeblood of tech startups isn't just money. It's executive and technical skills. The kind of skills that companies need to build real products. And the skills that venture capitalist Chris Sugden of Edison Partners sees in the graduates that are coming out of New Jersey Institute of Technology.
The amazing thing about NJIT is their graduates, they have multiple offers on average, not just one. They're coming out with real skill sets that are immediately hireable and available to them. I think we see an understanding by the faculty and administration at NJIT that we've got to train and educate the whole student, not just their, one side of their brain. And I do think that's sort of part of the DNA today. There's practical and there's sort of academia, and merging those two together and understanding that if we're going to have our young people go get great jobs and have great successful careers, they've got to have both sides of their brain activated. And I think we see that with NJIT.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich, no. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Charlie Pellett. Changes on the way for Major League Baseball jerseys, and Nike's logo will be moving to the upper right chest position.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
To LeBron, slam dunk.
The NBA is on TuneIn Premium. Each week, TuneIn picks an NBA game you just can't miss. The Miami Heat are taking their talents to Texas to take on the second-year phenom, Luka Doncic, and the Dallas Mavericks.
Pulls back, trying to make it 11-2.
This Saturday, the Miami Heat are at the Dallas Mavericks. Tip-off is at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Search NBA on TuneIn to follow your favorite NBA team today.
Along the goal line, scores! It takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
Gonna move, hit a shot, he scores!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok on Twitter. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
House Judiciary Committee members debated articles of impeachment against President Trump until late at night last night, and will pick it up at 9 Eastern Time this morning, hoping to get the articles to the full House by tomorrow. Most Democrats trying to fend off changes to the articles as presented earlier this week. Mourners were in the streets of Jersey City, New Jersey last night, outside synagogues and the funerals of 2 of the victims killed by assailants in a kosher market. Mayor Stephen Fulop with the mourners saying it was a hate crime.
We need to be aggressive in calling it out for what it is. I know some people will say that we should review things and take our time, but when you look at the facts of what transpired yesterday, it's difficult to argue anything other than that.
New Zealand military specialists will brave the chances of another eruption and land on a small volcanic island early Friday to attempt to retrieve the bodies of 8 victims of the eruption that claimed 8 other lives and severely burned survivors. The UK voting in parliamentary elections today, the future of Brexit at stake. Stock futures are up slightly this hour. I'm Michael Toscano.
You can't be the only one who spends time examining angles.
This deal, what would it look like?
You're right. The others are here.
Is he doing a good job, you think?
Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and this update is brought to you by IBKR and CME Group. The new micro E-mini futures contracts are available at IBKR at the lowest commissions. Learn more at ibkr.com/CME Mini. We do have an ECB rate decision. It left all rates unchanged, and the ECB will continue bond purchases as long as needed to stop the bond purchases shortly before raising rates. The ECB will reinvest QE debt for an extended time after its first rate hike. And again, that all just crossing the Bloomberg. We'll have more details straight ahead with Tom and John. First, checking market reaction. S&P futures remain little changed. They're up 1.5 points this morning. Dow futures are little changed. NASDAQ futures up 6. The DAX in Germany, little change. So is the CAC in Paris, and the FTSE 100 up 0.5%. 10-year Treasury down 230 seconds. Yield 1.79%. Yield on the 2-year 1.61%. NYMEX crude oil up 0.5% or 30 cents at $59.06 a barrel. And COMEX gold up 0.3% or $4.40 at $14.79.40 an ounce. The euro little changed against the dollar at 1.1133. The British pound lower against the dollar at 1.3166, and the yen at 108.65. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and John.
Karen, thanks so much. Folks, for those that aren't familiar with the wonderful Bloomberg terminal, we color code the headlines as we choose, and they come out in streams. John, I look at the stream of 20 headlines from the ECB. To me, there's a little different character. I'm going to go to one headline: bond buying to continue until shortly. It's an adverb. I don't think we'd see an adverb from Draghi until shortly before rates raised. Shortly.
We're nitpicking, aren't we? It's a carbon copy of the October decision. No big change here whatsoever on policy. No announcement, no mention of the strategy review that many people are expecting to be undertaken at the ECB as well. I imagine there'll be lots of questions about that at the ECB news conference, which begins in a little under 45 minutes' time in Frankfurt, Germany.
Well, let me bring in Moritz, and I'll do that bouncing off what John said as John nails it with the strategy review. Mr. Kramer is extremely good at the linkage of Frankfurt to these other capitals around Europe. Moritz Kramer is Chief Economic Advisor at Accreditus and joins us this morning. Moritz, the strategy review, what is it?
Good morning to New York, Tom. This is the big question, and I think the press conference will be mostly about that. I didn't expect that the communique would say something about the strategy review. But she needs to say something. This is Lagarde's first press conference. She only has one opportunity to make a good first impression and appear strong. She's following on Mario Draghi. She's inheriting a very large set of boots, so she needs to have answers to many of those questions. She doesn't need the answers to what will come out of the policy review, but she should be able to actually sort of describe what is remit of what she thinks needs to be discussed when the review starts, probably early next year. And this is a very wide-ranging potentially, so she needs to narrow it down or give some guidance what to expect. I think just dodging the question altogether in the press conference would be a communication mistake.
So let's go ahead this way with you, Moritz. What do you think needs to change at the ECB? What do you think should be a part of that review?
I think there needs a couple of things need to be discussed. One that will definitely be part of it is what is the definition of price stability? In the last strategic review in 2003, the ECB decided it's just below 2%, near but not above 2%. Now, during the 8 years of Mario Draghi, the average inflation rate was 1.2, which most observers would say is sufficiently far away from the target to be uncomfortable. So what is actually, is 1.2 already price stability as the European Treaty demands as a first mandate from the ECB or not? There are different views on that, and people pretty much know who is in which camp. So she needs to square the circle and decide what is actually price stability. What are we targeting here? Because, the world has changed in the last 16 years since this was defined. The second big area, which I feel is very important and which I genuinely do hope they will be addressing, is governance at the ECB. Among the major central banks in the world, the ECB is the only one that I'm aware of that does not publish the votes of the members of the Monetary Policy Committee. And that is a problem potentially, as we've seen in September, because the minority doesn't have a way to express their views in a structured and coordinated and organized way. So what they do, then they speak to the press, they have their own press releases, and basically voice their disagreement in very strong terms. In September, for example, there wasn't even a vote at all. So I think Lagarde should try to give the dissenters and the minority their voice back, to allow them to be heard in a proper way, and that may help to stop this sort of ambush and this sort of guerrilla communication that we've seen partly, because in the long term that will undermine the credibility and the guidance of the ECB. So I strongly hope that this will be one of the elements that they will be discussing, and hopefully they will decide something along those lines. Personally, I would even think they should think about like the Fed's dot plot to give sort of better guidance and give a stronger voice to each members. But that seems to be one step too far at this juncture.
And given how much some people hate it in the United States, Moritz, I'm not sure how many people in Europe would be happy about it. Another issue that's been called for has been climate issues as a part of the monetary policy decision process. A couple of things are starting to align here, Moritz, and let me go through a few of them, and I'm going to ask you where this is going. The EU Commission, very focused on climate issues. The ECB considering how to include it in their monetary policy decisions, and Germany almost looking for an excuse to scrap its fiscal brake and perhaps declare a climate emergency and be able to spend more on that particular issue. I'm just wondering if these sort of issues can all come together as one. It might sound like a bit of a conspiracy theory, but I'm just looking at the direction of travel. That seems to be where it's heading, Moritz. What are your thoughts on it?
I think you're up to something. I agree that this is the stars potentially aligned on that. So the new European Commission just came out with this new Green Deal, or just called Green Deal, which really requires spending which is way above what the European Union itself can do. So the national governments need to help. The ECB can help a little, but I think there is some expectations quite unrealistic that the ECB can be a player in combating or mitigating climate change. It cannot. Its primary mandate is price stability. It has a secondary mandate, which is sort of a second order, to support the European policy strategy as long as it does not interfere with price stability, which is its primary mandate. So it's a clear sort of priority, one over priority two. So, with Brussels now very strongly barking up the climate tree, this is the policy agenda of the new European Commission. So the ECB can support that as long as it doesn't undermine the inflation targeting. And there are some ways to do that. They can, they can rearrange the structure of the bond buying, and they can, help through the banking supervision to get a stronger sort of risk assessment from the banks for climate change, etc. But whatever they do, it will be a marginal player. They will not be able, and they would not contemplate that for a second, to finance green investments through central bank money. That's totally off the table. That's not going to happen. So I think the ECB will fall in line in supporting that strategy, and they should. But it's going to be small beer compared to really the investments that are required to combat climate change.
Moritz, there is a broader question, a broader issue at play here that I think we should wrap up with you with a final question. You used to oversee sovereign ratings at Standard & Poor's. That's why many people listening right now will be familiar with your name. That gives you a unique set of insights into how governments operate, how they use their own particular personal balance sheets in individual constituencies across Europe and elsewhere. How do you see the relationship between governments' fiscal and monetary policies, the ECB, evolving in the coming year?
I think there will be some loosening in the budget, particularly in Germany. Not massively. There actually has been some mild loosening over the last couple of years, and that's what Draghi been calling for. So clearly, if the governments had sort of bigger deficits, then the interest rates wouldn't have had to go down as much as they had. But I think the regulation and the treaty is such that it's going to be incremental. I don't see anything like in the US where you have a huge step up in the deficit. That's not likely in Europe.
I love that word, incremental. That really describes the moment. Moritz Kramer, thank you
Rich,
so much
thank
for
you.
the credits. That's really, really quite good. This is an historic moment, as I mentioned earlier, and I think John will agree with me, folks. This has been underplayed in the terrific news flow of the last 10 days, the impeachment in Washington and, of course, the elections today in the United Kingdom. We are precluded from speaking about them due to UK law. But I'll tell you, John, this ECB press conference, at the minimum, it's a mystery. And maybe it'll move markets.
Well, let's pick up on that word, incremental.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people looking for some big change from this ECB and its relationship with governments.
We all like that.
Whether we get some fiscal easing from the likes of Germany, things happen slowly in Europe. I'm not sure what it will take to get the government in Germany to turn around and say, we'll push the fiscal stimulus button. But I think we can argue at the moment they're not there yet. And it's going to take a lot of time to get them there.
And it's like the trade talks. December 15th is 3 days away. Do we know what's going to happen?
Reports from Reuters that the president is meeting with his advisors today. And perhaps we'll find out sooner rather than later.
Those headlines out of China this morning as well.
Yeah.
And they're boosting their economy. Please stay with us from Queen Victoria Street in London this day of the elections of the United Kingdom. This is Bloomberg.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today. Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
The Federal Reserve's independence is crucial.
Central banks should be prepared and not presumptuous.
Finance.
In order to grow, you need to innovate.
Global money doesn't like uncertainty.
Investment.
I think the issue in the market is really more about the possibility of a recession in the next couple of years.
I do think we need to get back to where we have always been, the American dream.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone, from our studios in London, in the city, next to Mansion House, down from the Royal Exchange, Queen Victoria Street. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. This day of an election in the United Kingdom, very strict rules on what television and radio across the entire nation can and cannot say. We're precluded from any discussion of the elections, and we'll, of course, honor that commitment. Good news, tons of news flow with a very ECB mystery of the first efforts by Madame Lagarde. We'll get to that in a moment. We've got a wonderful guest to drive forward that conversation. We do this with futures flat, Dow futures negative 15, the VIX 15.13, yields churn. As John Farrell mentioned earlier, the dollar weaker, 97.16 on that blended DXY index of the major trading partners. Sterling 131.75, and euro, I would note, stronger off of Chairman Powell's comments, 111.33. Bloomberg Surveillance this morning and Coast to Coast, brought to you by Cohn Resnick. Transform your tax game. The Cohn Resnick team can help dealmakers develop a winning tax strategy. Visit CohnResnick.com/tax insight. John, I was reading on the wonderful new acquisition by the New York Yankees, and it was a really informative podcast sponsored by Cohn Resnick out on social media. It's really, how do you put that much money and that much time?
Is that your plug for Cohn Resnick or the podcast?
For both. It's how do you put that much money and that much time?
How much money
into a baseball player? $245 million.
Oh, is that all?
I think into a baseball player or an English football player, because they slow down and they
How much of that money does the player get? Is that basically all the players' money?
Get it all. Yeah.
That's all the players' money. That's the difference between football and baseball then, because in football you have to acquire the player. If they're not out of contract, you've got to pay the other team for the player.
So when
have to pay them big money
when Ronaldo gets $1 gazillion, that's not to him.
So when Ronaldo went from Real Madrid to Juventus, for instance, Juventus had to pay about 100 million to Real Madrid,
just as a fee,
and then negotiate a separate contract with Ronaldo.
Do you know that contract? Is that public information?
It'll be out there somewhere. I don't have the numbers to hand, but they'll be getting massive amount of money anyway. But yes, there's a separate contract negotiation. The beauty, and Juventus have been great at it, a team like Juventus have waited for people's contracts to finish and then get them on a free transfer so they don't have to play the other team.
They don't have to pay the big fee.
And then they can pay the players a little bit more money.
Unlike AC Milan, which gets taken to the cleaners.
AC Milan just doesn't have the money to do anything, either pay the players or buy the players.
Okay, that prepares us for our guest here, Farrell Wound Up.
Looking forward to catching up with Frederic Ducrozet. He joins us now. He joins us from Pictet Wealth Management. He joins us ahead of an ECB news conference that begins in around about 27 minutes' time. Fred, great to have you with us on the programme. Walk me through what you expect to hear and what you expect not to hear from President Lagarde in 30 minutes' time.
Well, I think it's always interesting for the first press conference. We know a lot about her, to be honest. We know a lot about her style. We know a lot about her tweets, about how she tends to possibly change the ECB's communication, reaching out to the broader public. We know all that. So what makes it even more interesting, I think, is that most people, just like me, expect nothing new today. And yet we might still have a few surprises. So at least we'll be focusing on what Mrs. Lagarde announces in terms of the strategy review, which is a very, strategic objective of the ECB under her new management, and there might be a few surprises here or there.
Fred, before the monetary policy review has even finished at the Fed, it feels like they've already adapted to what they're about to produce at some point in the future. It sounds bizarre, but that seems to be what is happening. The way they view the data has changed. They believe there's more slack in the economy in the United States. The way they will respond to the data has also shifted. They're telling us now, the chairman is telling us that inflation, when it picks up, if it's not significant, even then, even a significant move up, we're not necessarily going to hike rates even then. It's a real dovish shift. So, Fred, I'm wondering what that means for the ECB. We don't have to wait for these monetary policy reviews to start to finish. We can have a feel for what is about to happen. That's already happening at the Fed. What's about to happen at the ECB?
I couldn't agree more, and we know that President Draghi actually was being criticized for that, being, this kind of very strong leader, sometimes making de facto choices and imposing them on the rest of the council. And the one you just mentioned are clearly the same for the ECB, by the way. Sometimes I'm joking about this, but the Fed is stealing a little bit from the ECB's playbooks, talking about persistent, significant increase in inflation, even though you are closer to employment, full employment in the US, obviously. But I fully agree. I think a lot is already de facto changed in the euro area as well. You know that the ECB has only a single mandate, only headline inflation closer to 2%. This might be amended, but in practice, we know already that the ECB is looking at core inflation, a bit like core PCE in the US, that a few changes could be made, but essentially the same idea prevails, that you need to see a sustained, robust convergence of inflation and underlying inflation closer to the 2% target over the medium term.
How do you think that would officially manifest itself, Fred? Because at the moment, as you know, back in 2003 was the last monetary policy review at the ECB. They interpret their mandate of price stability with inflation close to but below 2%. Is it going to be as boring as saying the new inflation target's 2%? Or are they going to do something more than that?
I think this one is interesting because I do expect a change to 2%, full stop. I think anything more complicated than that is useless, yeah.
What we would say is symmetric or asymmetric. There's an asymmetric debate. I had Charles Evans at the Council on Foreign Relations 4 weeks ago. That was the thunderous topic for Mr. Evans of Chicago. Wonderful. Is there an asymmetric study at the ECB and within Europe, or is it, as you say, as vanilla is 2%?
It's true that when I ask people in Frankfurt or in Paris, the definition of price stability can differ. So 16 years ago, the definition and the clarification was close to but below 2%, and there is an asymmetric dimension in that. You're right. I expect this to be removed and changed to 2%.
That's really
it's only part of the story, because how you get there, obviously, matters a lot.
Explain to our audience, particularly in America, explain the constraints Madame Lagarde and all that the ECB have because of the odd fiscal structure of Europe. I mean, this is not about having lunch and going on a retreat at a castle. John, were you invited to the castle?
I wasn't.
For the retreat? I didn't get. I asked Madame Lagarde this morning.
Maybe Fred was.
Invite got lost in the mail. but Fred, this is really important. I mean, they have huge institutional constraints because of the odd structure, don't they?
Yes, they do. We know all the flows. We know it's not only about policy, by the way. That's something she made clear during her hearings at the European Parliament. It's also about everything that is incomplete in the European Monetary Union. So I'm thinking about the Capital Market Union, the Banking Union. It's starting to move. Lines are starting to shift, including in Germany, but it's going too slow. And if you add that to the fact that we had austerity everywhere at the same time in the euro area after the double-dip recession, it's a recipe for disaster. She's been clear, just like Draghi, that we need more support from fiscal/institutional reform. The risk, as you said, is that we're getting there too slow, and that next year the first thing the ECB has to do is to ease before we get there.
Fred, just a final question as we approach this news conference. Even the best of the best have come up against difficulties when they take on the role as the governor of a central bank, the president, the chairman. We saw it from Bernanke, we've seen it from Yellen, we saw it from Powell. Then things settle down. They find out that the best thing to do is to make it boring. Is that challenge the same challenge for Christine Lagarde, or can she change the rules of how to execute these news conferences?
Yes, I think the same risk applies, except that she's very experienced in that matter, even if it's not as a central banker, and I'm quite convinced that she will avoid the biggest mistakes. Also, I think the focus, and she's been lucky about that, about the timing, the growth projections, the inflation projections today is likely to remain broadly unchanged. She got time ahead of her, and the time will be spent to really reflect on the strategy review, to try and bring back some cohesion and unity, credibility, strength to the governing council, for them to act if needed. I mean, that's the question mark. If they do need to do something, whether will they cut rates again, will they increase QE, will they increase the issuer limits? Those are very difficult questions in a very difficult political environment, and for that to be credible, if she needs to do more, she first needs to bring everyone back to the table.
And will we hear those famous words, whatever it takes? She's been reluctant so far. Fred, great to catch up with you. Frédéric Ducrozet there, Pictet Wealth Management Strategist, ahead of the ECB news conference, Tom, in around about 20 minutes.
I love how he went there to some of the underlying theory. Obviously, there's differences with any given central bank, but it's truly original, folks. And I would go back to sort of the mystery of out of Duisenberg, who was the first, president, and then all of a sudden there's this French guy, Jean-Claude Trichet, an engineer with a whole different approach to economics, shows up. And again, it's the same mystery today. What is to come?
It changed with Draghi. Will it change once again with Christine Lagarde? The ECB president delivering her news conference in 20 minutes' time. We'll have coverage of that for you right here on Bloomberg Radio. You are listening to Bloomberg Surveillance.
And now the news in New York City. Here's John Tucker.
Yeah, and Tom, the House Judiciary Committee set to finish debating articles of impeachment against President Trump today, with a likely party line vote to send the resolution to the floor of the House. A committee opened the formal debate last night. New estimates show Senator Elizabeth Warren is overstating the proceeds of her wealth tax by at least $1 trillion. And it's been a pretty good year for Manhattan's apartment landlords. November was their best month yet. Units leased for a median of $3,502. That's per month, according to appraiser Miller Samuel at brokerage Douglas Elliman. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm John Tucker. This is Bloomberg. Tom.
John Tucker, thanks so much. Love John Tucker's comment the other day, folks, on the value per pitch of the new pitcher for the New York Yankees.
Very cool. Do you remember the
stunning statistic? No, I don't remember.
No, okay.
Don't remember the number. I can't count. I watched Sheffield Wednesday last night.
That's some value.
Joe Elliott was thrilled that I watched Sheffield Wednesday.
They're not
from
in
London. This is Bloomberg.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night, and somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here, testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
On 3, our unlimited data is actually unlimited. Like for reals. None of this, we're so unlimited, but you can't watch your fave Christmas film endlessly. Or dead scroll inspo for tree decorations until 4 in the morning. We wouldn't do that to you.
We have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Ho, ho, ho.
Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data.
At Asda, packs of beer are just £12 each, including 24 bottles of Budweiser, 18 cans of Stella, or 12 bottles of Birra Moretti. Looks like you're hosting this year. Asda, let's make Christmas extra special. Selected stores online, subject to availability. Budweiser 300ml, Stella 440ml, Moretti 330ml. Exclude Scotland drink aware.
Those up, dart toward the end zone. Caught ball, touchdown.
NFL fans, hear every live game on TuneIn Premium.
Mahomes throwing off the back foot. He wants McCall. Hardman, he's got the catch at the 15. Jukes at the 10. 5. Touchdown.
Today, hear the home and away call as the New York Jets visit the Baltimore Ravens at 8:20 p.m. Eastern.
It's a block, 20, 25, 30. It's a foot race, 40.
At
50.
home or on the go, hear the home and away call of every NFL game this season on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
From ESPN and the award-winning producers of The Sterling Affairs comes the latest season of 30 for 30 podcasts. 4 brand new stories of espionage.
He wanted this team to be the Barcelona of women's basketball.
Resilience.
I started to scream. I tried to get away.
Corruption.
It's the culture of win at all costs.
And rebirth.
How will we ever rebuild it?
30 for 30 podcasts, season 6. Listen in favorite 30 for 30 podcasts on TuneIn.
Slow conversations from Bloomberg Television. Here's Taylor Riggs.
Venture capital is coming to terms with its lack of diversity, and Lo Tony is leading the charge. The former Google Ventures partner founded his own firm, Plexo Capital, with a mission to invest in early-stage funds led by women and underrepresented minorities. Plexo Capital announced today it raised a $42.5 million for its debut fund, and Lo Tony joins us now from New York. Lo, congratulations. What are you using the money for?
So we're going to use that money to invest into both venture funds led by a woman or a person of color, and then invest directly into companies that will source from the portfolios where we've made investments into venture capital firms.
What sectors do you like right now?
So we like enterprise and consumer. Typically, we go after VCs that are generalists and maybe lean a little bit more towards enterprise.
I talk about how you identify these opportunities. Often there's a great idea. Often there's a really good leader. What matters to you more?
We do like to make sure that the market opportunity can support a venture scale return. That said, it's all about the ability for the entrepreneur to be able to execute, to be able to hire the right employees, have the right vision for the product and the opportunity.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and this update is brought to you by Innovalon, a leading provider of cloud-based platforms empowering data-driven healthcare for insurance companies, physicians, pharmacy, and pharmaceutical companies. Innovalon data has a story to tell. Innovalon gives it a voice. And futures are little change to lower now this morning. Let's go to the first word breaking news desk for today's morning call. Here's Bill Maloney. Bill, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. A fade in the U.S. futures since the last time we spoke. Dow futures now down 45 points. S&P's dropped 3.5. And NASDAQ futures declined by 13. The U.S. 10-year yield at 1.79%. Gold is trading higher by 2. And Hong Kong rose 1.3% overnight, while European markets are trading mixed right now. Note the ECB rate decision kept rates unchanged, and Lagarde's press conference starts at 8:30. Back in the U.S. on the economic front, also at 8:30, PPI final demand and initial jobless claims. After the bell last night, Lululemon reported shares are down 4% in the pre-market. And regarding earnings this morning, Sienna EPS missed the lowest estimates. In other news, Delta's 2020 profit and revenue outlook beat street estimates, and Credit Suisse says that China iPhone shipments fell meaningfully in November. Wrapping things up, Starbucks was raised to overweight at JP Morgan, and over at UBS, FedEx was raised to neutral, while GE was raised to buy with a price target of 14. Live from the First Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Karen?
All right, Bill, thank you. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type squawk on your terminal, SQUAWK. And this update brought to you by Adipar. Adipar's portfolio reporting and insights platform is trusted by thousands of wealth advisors from family offices, RIAs, and large financial institutions. Learn more at addepar.com. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and John.
Karen, thanks so much. John Farrow and Tom Keene in London again to inform all of you coast to coast in Boston, New York, Washington, and 960 the Bay Area, and early morning San Francisco, and of course in Sirius XM, channel 119. Very strict and different rules in the United Kingdom versus the United States on an election day. We are very, very restricted in any comments on the election. Of course, Bloomberg will honor that.
We can say it's
in
happening.
Television, in radio.
We can say at 10 p.m.
There'll be a special show, the John Farrow Hour.
We can say there will be coverage at 10 p.m. local time. That will be 5 p.m. in New York. So there's a few things we can say.
And to be clear here, there's a data dump at 10 p.m. You learn a lot at 10 p.m. when you and Anna Edwards and Guy Johnson open this.
You will receive a single exit poll, and then we will start to have a look at the exit polls. We will not be able to talk about the content of those polls. We will not be able to talk about any polls whatsoever ahead of that particular time.
There we go. Nicely
That is when the polls close. So they opened at 7 a.m. this morning, London, and they close at 10 p.m. this evening, UK
and
time.
To borrow an American phrase, John, did you vote early and often today?
You can vote early, but once. And if you're in the line, this is something that people may not know. If you're in the line at the point of 10 p.m. and it goes past 10 p.m., you can still vote.
Yeah, that's a big debate in America. I think it varies state to state, I will say. I could be.
That is all we can say, so let's move on.
Let's move on from that. That was our political discussion for the day. This is an exceptionally important two-short interview with Ted Alden, the Council on Foreign Relations on China. Ted, what are the ramifications if the tariffs do not click in for China? Is that good news for them? How do you gauge what happens if we don't see new tariffs this in 3 days?
Well, I mean, the Chinese clearly want the tariff war to de-escalate. So if the U.S. doesn't move ahead on December 15th, that's good news for China. But China is holding out for removal of some of the tariffs that have already been put in place. That's a big
They want to go further.
Point in the current negotiation. They want to go further. Yeah, the talks seem to be about some kind of ratchet deal where the Chinese will agree to make certain quantities of agricultural purchases, and if they meet those, then gradually some of the tariffs that are already in place will come off. So obviously no new tariffs is good news for the Chinese, but they want to go farther than that.
Why is this so difficult? I mean, if there's the blunt instrument of Team A wants 3 things and Team B wants 3 other things, you sit down and you come to an agreement. What's the reason this time around that chemistry, that discourse is not working?
I mean, I think part of it is that what they're talking about is a pale shadow of what the United States wanted. I mean, the Trump administration hoped the tariffs would force some real fundamental economic changes in China. And now we're talking largely about a purchasing deal and maybe a bit of investment liberalization. So there's frustration on the U.S. side. The other thing is the president, he's been pretty clear about he loves tariffs. And so he's reluctant to remove tariffs. He thinks it's the best weapon. He thinks the U.S. is winning with the tariffs in place. So the Chinese are going to have to provide something that he can at least brag about before he wants to see any of those tariffs taken off.
Ted, when you look at what's happening outside of this trade negotiation between the United States and China, what you see is that a hard stance versus China is perhaps one of the few things that the Democrats and Republicans in Washington actually agree on. That supply chains are arguably already decoupling. We've seen that news again this week with China. We saw it with Huawei as well when they had their recent phone release. There's an argument it's likely to get worse before it gets better. And from what I'm seeing is that there's a habit of defining the current state of US-China relations by wherever we are in the current trade dispute. Is that a mistake, Ted?
Well, I actually think the bigger issue is the one you mentioned, which is the decoupling question. And a lot of that's happening in the technology space.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the Chinese announcement this week that they're going to, get all foreign computers and software out of their systems over the next several years. The recent executive order from the Trump administration for scrutinizing all foreign technology coming into the United States, particularly focused on China, the restrictions on Huawei and export control. I think to a lot of extent that's the real game. I mean, the tariffs have almost become a sideshow at this point. What we're talking about is a growing technology competition between the U.S. and China, and I think increasing isolation between the two on that front.
When do we see a new edition of Failure to Adjust?
Well, I'll probably write a different book. I'm kind of looking at where things go in the global trading system, so I probably won't be quite so domestically focused. But I know I need to get another book out there.
Oh, I love
talking about my last one.
Folks, this is wonderful to say to Ted Alden because his books are constructively and wonderfully, incredibly dense, incredibly informed. I'm busting his chops there. I'm whipping off another book. Ted Alden's book, Failure to Adjust. I can't say enough about it with a broad reach of what happened to our multilateral trade of truly a forgotten generation. Ted Alden with the Council on Foreign Relations. In 5 minutes, an important press conference. Christine Lagarde, the president of the European Central Bank, and our team from Frankfurt. Stay with us from London. John Farrell and Tom Keene. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Americans are projected to fall seriously behind on their credit card bills at the highest rate in a decade as banks push a record number of people to get plastic. TransUnion says that the share of credit card borrowers who are at least 90 days past due on their accounts will probably tick up to 2.01% next year. That's the highest since 2010, but TransUnion says the increase is not cause for alarm, noting that bad card debt still remains much lower than it was during the last recession. At JP Morgan Chase, the robots are watching employee expenses. The bank has started using machine learning technology to process expense reports and figure out if they're complying with company policies. Almost every industry grapples with policing expenses, but it presents a special challenge in finance, where employees spend much of the year on the road and meeting with clients. Stock futures are slightly lower, Dow futures down 18. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Some people get very excited by Christmas shopping, and they've probably done all theirs already back in July. But if the thought of Christmas shopping gives you sweaty palms, tell yourself, I'm not a shopper, I'm a gifter. Then as a gifter, the possibilities are endless with TK Maxx. Give more adventurously with TK Maxx's range of gifts at prices. With big brand bargains across apparel, home, jewellery, kids' toys and more. In-store and at tkmaxx.com. Gift different with TK Maxx.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen and favorite ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds, or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught, it is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today. Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is from London, from the City of London. So distracted by a loud Tom Keane in the studio, I forgot where I was. Let's get you your economic indicators, shall we? Commonwealth Financial Network, for the sixth straight time, J.D. Power ranks Commonwealth #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms. Visit commonwealth.com to learn more. Let's get that economic data, shall we? Here is Vinny Dowd-Giudice.
Okay, Jonathan, here in the U.S., some noise in the numbers. Jobless claims popping up to 252,000 last week, the most in 2 years. What happened? Well, it looks like seasonal quirks, the Thanksgiving holiday, people having trouble or getting in, or the paperwork in for filing claims. So jobless claims 252,000. Looks like it could be a blip, a seasonal quirk. Meantime, producer price index unchanged. November, excluding food and energy, a negative, down 0.2%. I'm Vinny Dowd-Giudice, Bloomberg Radio. Let's go back to London.
Vinny Dowd-Giudice, thank you very much, sir. We are in London. We're looking forward to this news conference taking place in Frankfurt, Germany, with the new ECB President, Christine Lagarde. I can tell you she has entered the room with the Vice President of the ECB, Luis de Guindos. She is currently standing in front of a whole host of photographers, Tom, having her photo taken. So she hasn't even managed to sit down yet and look at her notes and get in front of a microphone. Those photos are still snapping away.
I think it's the smartest press conference John, I mean this very seriously. I think the press is more informed there. There are more Michael McKees. There are more, Steve Leisman and the others that ask smart questions.
And I think more importantly, Tom, you get some follow-ups sometimes as well. There's a dialogue there with the journalists, and I think that's evolved over time with the former ECB President, Mario Draghi. We can now cross over to catch up with ECB President Christine Lagarde.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our press conference. Today is the first time that I have had the privilege and pleasure of sharing the monetary policy meeting of the Governing Council of the ECB. And I'm delighted to proceed now with reporting on the outcome of our meeting, together with my friend, the Vice President. The Governing Council meeting was also attended by the Commission Executive Vice President, Mr. Valdis Dombrovskis. Based on our regular economic and monetary analysis, we decided to keep the key ECB interest rates unchanged. We expect them to remain at their present or lower levels until we have seen the inflation outlook robustly converge to a level sufficiently close to or below 2% within our projection horizon. And such convergence has been consistently reflected in underlying inflation dynamics. On November 1st, we restarted net purchases under our asset purchase program at a monthly pace of 20 billion euros. We expect them to run for as long as necessary to reinforce the accommodative impact of our policy rates and to end shortly before we start raising the key ECB interest rates. We also intend to continue reinvesting in full the principal payments from maturing securities purchased under the APP for an extended period of time past the date when we start raising the key ECB interest rates, and in any case for as long as necessary to maintain favorable liquidity conditions and an ample degree of monetary accommodation. The incoming data since the last Governing Council meeting in late October point to continued muted inflation pressures and weak euro area growth dynamics, although there are some initial signs of stabilization in the growth slowdown and of a mild increase in underlying inflation in line with our previous expectations. Ongoing employment growth and increasing wages continue to underpin the resilience of the euro area economy. The comprehensive package of policy measures that the Governing Council decided in September provides substantial monetary stimulus, which ensures favorable financing conditions for all sectors of the economy. In particular, easier borrowing conditions for firms and households are underpinning consumer spending and business investment. This will support the euro area expansion, the ongoing build-up of domestic price pressures, and thus the robust convergence of inflation to our medium-term aim. In the light of the subdued inflation outlook, the Governing Council reiterated the need for monetary policy to remain highly accommodative for a prolonged period of time to support underlying inflation pressures and headline inflation developments over the medium term. We will therefore closely monitor inflation developments and the impact of the unfolding monetary policy measures on the economy. Our forward guidance will ensure that financial conditions adjust in accordance with changes to the inflation outlook. In any case, the Governing Council continues to stand ready to adjust all of its instruments as appropriate to ensure that inflation moves towards its aim in a sustained manner in line with its commitment to symmetry. Now let me now explain our assessment in greater details, starting with the economic analysis. Euro area real GDP growth was confirmed at 0.2% quarter-on-quarter in the third quarter of 2019, unchanged from the previous quarter. The ongoing weakness of international trade in an environment of persistent global uncertainties continues to weigh on the euro area manufacturing sector and is dampening investment growth. At the same time, incoming economic data and survey information, while remaining weak overall, point to some stabilization in the slowdown of economic growth in the euro area. The services and construction sectors remain resilient, despite some moderation in the latter part of 2019. Looking ahead, the euro area expansion will continue to be supported by favorable financing conditions, further employment gains in conjunction with rising wages, the mildly expansionary euro area fiscal stance, and the ongoing, albeit somewhat slower, growth in global economy. This assessment is broadly reflected in the December 2019 Eurosystem staff macroeconomic projections for the euro area. These projections foresee annual real GDP increasing by 1.2% in 2019, 1.1% in 2020, 1.4% both in 2021 and 2022. Compared with the September 2019 ECB staff macroeconomic projections, the outlook for real GDP growth has been revised down slightly for 2020. The risks surrounding the euro area growth outlook related to geopolitical factors, rising protectionism and vulnerabilities in emerging markets remain tilted to the downside, but have become somewhat less pronounced. According to Eurostat's flash estimate, euro area annual HICP inflation increased from 0.7% in October 2019 to 1% in November, reflecting mainly higher services and food price inflation. On the basis of current futures prices for oil, headline inflation is likely to rise somewhat in the coming months. Indicators of inflation expectations stand at low levels. Measures of underlying inflation have remained generally muted, although there are some indications of a mild increase in line with previous expectations. While labour cost pressures have strengthened amid tighter labour market, the weaker growth momentum is delaying their pass-through to inflation. Over the medium term, inflation is expected to increase, supported by our monetary policy measures, the ongoing economic expansion, and solid wage growth. This assessment is also broadly reflected in the December 2019 Eurosystem staff macroeconomic projections for the euro area, which foresees annual HICP inflation at 1.2% in 2019, 1.1% in 2020, 1.4% in 2021, and 1.6% in 2022. Compared with the September 29 ECB staff macroeconomic projections, the outlook for HICP inflation has been revised up slightly for 2020 and down slightly for 2021, mainly driven by the expected future path of energy prices. Turning now to the monetary analysis, broad money M3 growth stood at 5.6% in October 2019, unchanged from September. Sustained rates of broad money growth reflect ongoing bank credit creation for the private sector and low opportunity cost of holding M3 relative to other financial instruments. The narrow monetary aggregate M1 continues to be the main contributor to broad money growth on the component side. The growth of loans to firms and households remain solid, benefiting from the continued pass-through of our accommodative monetary policy stance to bank lending rates. The annual growth rate of loans to non-financial corporations increased to 3.8% in October, compared with 3.6% in September, while the annual growth rate of loans to households continued on its gradual upward path, reaching 3.5% in October. Our accommodative monetary policy stance will help to safeguard very favorable bank lending conditions and will continue to support access to financing across all economic sectors, and in particular to small and medium-sized enterprises. To sum up, a cross-check of the outcome of the economic analysis with the signals coming from the monetary analysis confirmed that an ample degree of monetary accommodation is still necessary for the continued robust convergence of inflation to levels that are below but close to 2% over the medium term. In order to reap the full benefits from our monetary policy measures, other policy areas must contribute more decisively to raising the longer-term growth potential, supporting aggregate demand at the current juncture, and reducing vulnerabilities. The implementation of structural policies in euro area countries needs to be substantially stepped up to boost euro area productivity and growth potential, reduce structural unemployment, and increase resilience. The 2019 country-specific recommendations should serve as the relevant signpost. Regarding now fiscal policies, the euro area fiscal stance is expected to remain mildly expansionary in 2020, thus providing support to economic activity. In view of the weakened economic outlook, the Governing Council welcomes the Eurogroup's call for differentiated fiscal responses and its readiness to coordinate. Governments with fiscal space should be ready to act in an effective and timely manner. In countries where public debt is high, governments need to pursue prudent policies and meet structural balance targets, which will create the conditions for automatic stabilizer to operate freely. All countries should intensify their efforts to achieve a more growth-friendly composition of public finances. Likewise, the transparent and consistent implementation of the European Union's fiscal and economic governance framework over time and across countries remains essential to bolster the resilience of the euro area economy. Improving the functioning of Economic and Monetary Union, the EMU, remains a priority. The Governing Council welcomes the ongoing work and urges further specific and decisive steps to complete the banking union and the capital markets union. Now, we are now together with the Vice President available for your questions, but before that, I'm going to take just a couple of minutes of your time to tell you a few things. One is each and every president has his or her own style of communicating. So I know some of you are keen to compare and rate or rank. I will have my own style. So as I said before, don't overinterpret, don't second guess, don't cross-reference. I'm going to be myself and therefore probably different. Point number one. Point number two, this introductory statement probably rings a few bells for those of you who follow those documents very carefully. But some of you will be disappointed that it does not include anything having to do with the strategic review. It is intended to be that way. So the introductory statement does not include, does not refer, and should not be associated with the strategic review that we are considering. And I'll be happy to give you, I can do that now actually if you want, a little bit of my thinking and our collective thinking of this on the strategic review, because I know that it is of interest to some of you. So, shall I do that now? Yeah, that's easier. And then you can ask questions. So So first of all, there is nothing unusual or extraordinary about having a strategic review. I actually consider for myself that it's a little bit overdue. Legitimately so, because there were many other things to do. But the last strategic review was in 2003. It's been 16 years since there has been a strategic review, so it's quite legitimate to have a strategic review at this point in time. Second, that strategic review needs to be comprehensive, needs to look at all and every issues, will turn each and every stone, and will take its time, but will not take too much time. By that I mean, my plan is to actually get the review started in the course of January. Don't ask me which week or which day or which second, but it will be in the course of January. And our goal is to complete it before the end of 2020. Third, about the strategic review, it will be reaching out to not just the usual suspects, but it will also include consulting with members of parliament, and I committed to that with the European Parliament. It will reach out to the academic community, of course. It will reach out to civil society representatives, and it will aim at not just preaching the gospel that we think we master, but also listening to the views of those to whom we reach out. You know, it is the point of every strategic review by all central banks that are conducting this exercise to actually look at their objective, how they define their medium-term objective in particular, how they give content to the price stability that is in their mandate, and it is the only objective that we have in our mandate ourselves. So that topic indeed will be core and center to our strategic review. And there is no preconceived landing zone at this point in time. Indeed, it will also address the major changes that have taken place over the course of the last 16 years. And by that I include the massive technological change that our societies are facing. It will include the immense challenge that climate change is addressing to each and every one of us, wherever located and whatever our mission and duties. It will include aspects of inequality that are certainly rising in our economies, and all of those will be addressed with a view to exploring each and every corner of the business that we conduct as a central bank to see how those businesses are affected and how we can take them into account to better respond to the mission that we have and to deliver on our mandate, serving the euro area citizens and delivering on the mandate of price stability. So that's on the strategic review. And if you have additional point that I can answer, I will, but I will not go into much further details when it comes to the substance, because the framework has not yet been completely agreed and discussed with members of the Governing Council, and I have certainly made a point of my tenure to include members of the Governing Council and to seek their views and their consideration before any decision is made. With that, I have huge respect for the work that you do. You are a main audience for the central bank. You're not the only audience. And I would also encourage you not to try to sort of draw too much conclusions or decisive findings from communication that I would address to different audience with a slightly different language in order to be maybe better understood by those who do not have your level of skills and in-depth knowledge of the matters that we deal with. With that, I'm happy to take questions. Christine is going to monitor that. And when I don't know, I will tell you that I don't know.
Christine Lagarde, her first press conference in Frankfurt with the European Central Bank. We're listening live on Bloomberg Radio.
Francesco Canepa, Reuters. So my first question is about the inflation forecast that you just read out. The 2022 forecast is now 1.6. Is it compatible with your idea of close but below 2%? Second question is about Teltro. The auction this morning, is fair to say, didn't go too well. Banks took out fewer loans than the ones they are set to repay. So that undoes some of your work in terms of adding excess liquidity into the system via QE. So what do you make of the auction, and how concerned are you about this low take-up? Thank you.
Thank you very much. One thing that the introductory statement does not specify, but you will find it, I'm sure, in the findings of the Eurosystem macroeconomic forecast, is that in our 2022 forecast for inflation, while the entire year is forecast at 1.6%, the fourth quarter is at 1.7%. So directionally, it is slightly increasing over the course of 2022 forecast that we have for inflation. Is it satisfactory? It's certainly directionally good, but is it the aim that we pursue? No, indeed. On Tiltro, my recollection of what was taken this morning was something like 97.3 billion euros, which is a little less than what was coming for maturity. Do I regard that as half success, half failure? Neither. I would tell you two things. One is, I think we have 7 auctions in the course of this TLTRO 3-2, to be precise. So I would not draw conclusion from this one. I would wait a little bit, particularly given the fact that this one is taking place at year end. And at year end, you close your book, there are many considerations that come into play. So I would not draw too many conclusions from this one. I would have preferred it to be a little bit higher, closer to 120 than, to 100, but, we'll look carefully at the next one. Thank you.
Mrs. Kalimowski.
Welcome to Frankfurt, Madame Lagarde. My first question, if I may follow up on the review of what you said about the review. You said, that's the fact that you're launching the review, or launched the review while you still haven't met your mandate, limit how much you can actually limit your wiggle room to how much you can actually change your definition of the mandate.
Right now, with the clock where it is, and as we listen to Madame Lagarde, we'll continue to monitor this. But very quickly here, Marcus Ashworth, I'm thrilled, has joined us today in our London offices. We talk to him so often. It's wonderful to be in the studio with Mr. Ashworth. He writes piercing essays on markets and the linkage into what we do. And particularly, Marcus, you write about the greed that is out there. It's been a year that brings on greed, double-digit returns. The ECB has to deal with that. Everybody else has to deal with that, and it feeds to the next year. What happens after a double-digit year?
Well, the obvious answer is not a lot, in a context that, therefore, I think 2020 has been set up as a obviously dull year compared to 2019, which surprised, was much stronger than people expected.
After the gloom of Q4, yeah.
Yeah, indeed. But actually, in fact, I'm quietly I'm quietly bullish for next year, particularly on equities. I think bonds, if you look how many negative yielding bonds there were, down at 17.5 trillion, up to 17.5 trillion, it's now down around 11.
I did not know. So coming $6 trillion.
It shows you that I think negative rates are being steadily rejected. And therefore I think you feed that through from bond markets through to equity markets. I think we're probably going to see a little bit more of the same, maybe not quite as big.
What's it mean for central banks, each with a different character of their balance sheet? Thomas Jordan speaking to Bloomberg today of the Swiss National Bank. Switzerland, Japan, they really care about good markets. Do Powell and Lagarde care about good markets?
They definitely do. Mr. Market is still as important as it always was. I think it's interesting, you look what happened, basically, as we say, from September. We've got the major markets in the world of central banks have cut rates. Have they acted in time to prevent a recession? I'm going to give them a probable here. I think that's the important factor for 2020, is that the action was taken early and quickly by the Fed and likewise again by the ECB to avert a recession.
How long does it take for their actions to permeate into the markets? There's the expectations game where it takes seconds. minutes, right?
I think it's a combination of instant response because people go, okay, well, they've done something here, I'm going to react, reprice.
Yeah,
but the actual real economy effect probably takes at least 2, maybe even 3 quarters.
I find that the questions here to Madame Lagarde a bit esoteric, and they're speaking of the strategic review. Does the Fed need a strategic review? Does the Bank of England need a strategic review?
Where do I start on this one, Tom? Right, let's start at the top.
Well, I should interrupt and say Mr. Ashworth is on the short list to replace Governor Carney.
I don't think so, Tom. I'm not on Mr. Carney's Christmas list. That's card list, that's for sure. But I think that, as far as the ECB is concerned, it's a new regime. We've had 8 years of Draghi, which is given everything that the market wants. Lagarde comes in at a difficult time. It's clearly a unhappy governing council with a lot of pushback particularly from the German and Dutch central banks and the like. She's going to, as you can see from her presentation so far, she's putting her own stamp on it. And she's giving us, I suppose, a new regime, and I think we're going to get a new review. But the fact they're going to take all of 2020 to do it means don't expect
central banker pace.
Yeah, this isn't coming quick.
Marcus Ashworth with us, and we'll continue with us. We're thrilled with that in our studios in London and Frankfurt. Christine Lagarde speaks now for the European Central Bank. Right now on negative rates seem to work. Use of rates has been quite efficient. We'll have more. This is Bloomberg Radio in London.
This is on 3. Our unlimited data is actually unlimited. Like, for reals. None of this, we're so unlimited, but you can't watch your fave Christmas film endlessly, or dead scroll inspo for tree decorations until 4 in the morning. We wouldn't do that to you.
We have no speed limits, no data caps, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost.
Ho, ho, ho.
Switch to 3, in-store or online. See 3.co.uk/unlimited-data.
At Asda, packs of beer are just £12 each, including 24 bottles of Budweiser, 18 cans of Stella, or 12 bottles of Birra Moretti. Looks like you're hosting this year. Asda, let's make Christmas extra special. Selected stores online subject to availability. Budweiser 300ml, Stella 440ml, Moretti 330ml. Exclude Scotland drink aware.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds, or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught, it is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
The good news is the economy is strong. The bad news is the economy is strong.
Financial crises take a really long time to recover from.
Finance.
The strong job market's pulling people back in.
You can't have for very long, monetary union without a fiscal union.
Investment.
What we preach is extreme diversification. It's hard to have sustained productivity without capital investment.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Paul Sweeney, our studios in New York, the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios. I'm Tom Keene at Queen Victoria Street here in London. This day of United Kingdom election, the rules here are very strict. We cannot speak in any way about the election, and of course, we will honor that. Paul Sweeney in New York. I'm Tom Keene here with Christine Lagarde speaking now. She's just been touching on negative rates, and she brings a couple Draghi-like statistics out as well at 1.4%. In 2022, that is the Eurozone's growth potential. We could talk for hours just about that one headline, but much more on negative rates as well, very critically. And again, this gets into the cultural treatment that we see. Madame Lagarde saying Euro area not seeing Japanification, as if she could say anything else to that emotion of decades of malaise in Japan. Futures -2, Dow futures -40. Here's the order of business. Paul Sweeney has a gentleman on equities in New York, and then we're thrilled that Marcus Ashworth is with us, and this will be the global Wall Street conversation of the day for Bloomberg Surveillance. Paul, who do you have in New York?
Of course, Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson